Okay, we'll call the meeting of the Ojai City Council to order and welcome everybody. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Johnston.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina.
Here.
Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Haney.
Here.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Bill, would you lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You all got a little out of sync there.
Yeah, I have before. It's not well received. Okay, we are approval of the agenda. Bill, did you have?
Yeah, Mayor Johnston, I will be pulling one item from consent, item I, but I also would suggest, in light of the number of people here, for item 3, that we move, out of courtesy for them, we move item 3 ahead of item 2 in the order tonight.
If there's no objection to that, we will do that.
I'll be pulling item H.
Okay, so you're pulling, okay, we want to pull H and what I?
Aye.
I?
I'm going to call you to the podium.
Okay, are there any other?
We need a motion to move to approve except for H and I,
Yes.
or I?
Or what?
Do we need
Don't
a,
start.
do we need a second?
You started the party early, Randy,
I'll
okay.
I'll second.
Okay, it's moved and second to approve the agenda as reordered. If there's no objection, so ordered. Let's go. We have a presentation on honoring Clean Air Day. Now, are we doing that, James, all ourselves here? Is that, we were hoping to have our new Director of Air Pollution Control and our representative, Steve Colomé, who's on the Air Pollution Advisory Commission here, but because of their meeting, they couldn't do it. We do have a couple of folks here who are major representatives, major players in the fight to improve the air quality and protect the air quality of the Ojai Valley. I see Michael Shapiro out there and Robin Gerber. There may be, are there any others out there? Okay. On October 2nd, there will be I guess, a small ceremony, and James, why don't you introduce that?
Yeah, thank you. So on October 2nd at Libby Park from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., the city is going to have a California Clean Air Day event, and in recognition of California Clean Air Day on that day. We have reached out to several organizations, including the Electric Vehicle Advocates of Ventura County, the American Green Zone Alliance, who helped us launch the all-electric landscaping equipment project, Seafrog, Ojai Citizens for Clean Air, Complete Streets Committee, Ojai Trolley, and Ojai Public Works Department will also have a demonstration of the battery-powered maintenance equipment here at the city. So we're going to have all of those organizations at Libby Park that day, and then in addition, we have the Recreation Department's going to host a Ride to the Rec Center event, where they are going to offer a $25 recreation gift certificate or a free tune-up at Bicycles of Ojai for people who ride their bikes to the rec and enter into the raffle to win those. So, so come out and join us on October 2nd. It's a statewide event. The city of Ojai has taken the pledge, and on the website for California Clean Air Day, you can see other cities and people who have taken the pledge, and you can get more information about other events that day.
Can I make an addition?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I have you on the
So,
list. I missed it.
All right. Ojai Ride and Roll, which is a co-sponsored by the Complete Streets Committee and the Ojai Valley Green Coalition. Every few months, we lead a bike train, which is a train of kids, up to 60 kids, to the different schools. And I'll be leading the Topa Topa train. And that train is so big that Chief Freihoff provides 2 officers to make sure that the motorists behave. But it's a wonderful event, and it really teaches the kids the joy of bike riding and independence and all the healthy things that go with that. So, Ojai Ride, it's the week of, so it's September, it's every morning, September 30 to October 4, and especially on National Clean Air Day, which is, I think, on a Thursday?
It's Wednesday the 2nd.
Wednesday. So we'll do it all week long. And then in addition, on October 6th, we're going to do a critical mass bike ride through downtown Ojai.
Okay, before I read the proclamation, I want to acknowledge some of the achievements that have occurred here very recently, some milestones. One, the folks at Seafrog and the work that they have been doing with the County of Ventura have finally reversed a very long and unhealthy practice. They issued at one time permits for oil and gas drilling without end, no renewal dates. And finally, the lawyers and everybody, under some considerable pressure from the group, which is founded here in Ojai, has gotten the board's attention, and that action is being, or that practice is being changed. And I'm going to let, I think, Ryan, I think you've already announced this once, but I'm going to let you announce it again. It's great work. He's only been on the Air Pollution Control Board as our representative for what, a couple, well, I guess since
9 months.
9 months. And so in 9 months, tell us what we have just achieved
Well,
in air quality under your
one-
leadership.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to say it was all me, and that would be a complete lie. But I really want to thank the people at APCD who started it before I got there. But a lot of people in Ojai don't understand that as environmentally conscious as we are in this valley, we actually have really bad air quality. And it's surprising to a lot of people, especially those who come from LA or other areas. And it's not necessarily car pollution, but it is partly car pollution. But it's really because of the way the air is trapped in the valley and doesn't get out real well. And we were one of only 2 cities, and I say were, it's going to be the good news at the end. We were one of only 2 cities that were not in compliance with federal rules regarding particulate matter in the air. And we have finally, over the last 9 months, achieved our goal of getting under that federal standard, which is also the state standard, and we're moving towards going in the right direction for the new standards that will be coming out. So that's a really positive thing. And the Air Pollution Control Board, not that they have, not that everything they do is always in 100% agreement with what we feel like they should do in Ojai. We have to give them some credit for paying enough attention to us and focusing on this. And as part of my duties there, they wanted to make sure that they rewarded Ojai, and we issued a proclamation to the city from APCD that says, congratulations on all the work that's been going on up here. And a lot of it goes to the local groups that have really been the catalyst for making that happen as well, specifically Seafrog, but to the community as a whole for being aware of it and getting us moving in the right direction. It's not done yet. We're going to keep trying. We're going to keep trying to get better, but it's something that everybody should be conscious about. And I also want to reiterate, I said at our last meeting, but since we get to do it early this one, APCD, the Air Pollution Control District, we have a lot of grant money that gets doled out for various things, specifically for old diesel and old environmentally not sound equipment that you can essentially apply for a grant to fix up that equipment to bring it to a much cleaner, normal standard. They will cover a lot of the time the difference between the repair of the old equipment and what it would cost to bring it to new, better equipment. And for farmers in the valley, whether you're in the city or not, it always has felt to me on that board like our valley isn't getting its fair share of that grant money. So I encourage anyone to contact us at the city, contact APCD, Air Pollution Control District Board, down in Ventura. We want to make sure we're getting our fair share of that and clean up the air in the valley the best we can.
Thank you, Ryan. This annual event is just simply to raise the consciousness of people, and I'm going to read through some of the things that all of us can do as individuals. They encourage people, plant a home garden, plant a tree, plant an indoor plant in your office or at home, plant an indoor plant in your office or at home. I don't know why that's in twice. Reduce vehicle emissions, leave your car at home for a day or as often as you can. Telecommute when you can. Walking, biking. Most everything that's on this list, in one fashion or another, we in the Ojai Valley actually do, and it's just we need to be sure we encourage our neighbors to join in the effort. And our newspaper, I just saw Laura come in, had a nice editorial pointing out the I don't know what we'll call it, low-hanging fruit, but something that is really significant, and that is the two-stroke engine. The difficulty with the two-stroke engine, if any of you have used them or know of them. I remember as a young man in college of driving a Vespa that had this small engine, and I got rid of it right away. My father suggested I'd live longer if I did. But you pour the oil right directly into the gas tank. So there, and as it's been pointed out, that a two-stroke engine, the problem, there is a limit to what you can do to clean up an internal combustion engine. Because if you add the catalytic converters and all the things that are on cars, you don't carry that around on your back or push it around in your front yard as you mow the grass. So anyway, that's a huge source of pollution, and the city was certified as a green zone, the first one in the county, when they turned in all the light landscaping equipment, and the Air Pollution Control Board gave us a grant to replace all that equipment, so that things like the leaf blowers and the edgers, the what do they call those, weed whips or weed eaters, we even have chainsaws that are operated that way. It's a small step, but what is the old proverb? The longest journey begins with the first step, and so we got to keep doing this. So with that, and I would say without further ado, but I've already done probably more than the audience would care to hear. But I have a proclamation here. I'm going to give it to Ryan, and hopefully he will be able to be present on October 2nd to make a presentation publicly to all the people that have contributed to the effort. So, thank you,
Thank
Ryan.
you, Ojai.
Thank you, everyone.
And this was not on the list as a presentation. We were going to do it under public comment, but is Lanny here? I thought I saw him when I came in.
And Julie.
And Julie. Oh,
Yeah.
why don't you guys come on up, and we'll do this right now in the interest of not having you have to labor through some of the items later on the agenda. We are in California, and these folks know well about this. In California, 52 years ago, the state of California adopted the Native American Day, and I don't know that we have ever done that, but with Lanny's bringing it to everyone's attention, and I know all the work that Randy and Severo and Julie did at the and Bill on the cultural heritage, that it seemed appropriate that I, as mayor, go ahead and exercise my independent judgment and assume that on behalf of the people who had labored long and hard, that they would be in agreement with this. So let me read to you. And where is Lanny? Is he hiding in the back?
Lanny's hiding.
Yeah, he's
Okay. He's been invited down. He doesn't have to come. Okay. It says, whereas on September 27th, 2019 marks the 52nd annual California Native American Day, and whereas California has been home to human beings for more than 12,000 years, with the presence of European Americans only a tiny fraction of that time. And whereas despite oppression and population devastation earlier in the state's history, today California is the home to the nation's largest population of Native Americans, both from native tribes and from others drawn to the tremendous opportunities offered in the state of California. And whereas the success of tribal businesses and the presence today of tribal members in all walks of life stand as a testament to the resilience and the indomitable spirit of the Native peoples. Whereas here in Ojai, we recognize and embrace the Native Americans who cherish this valley, call it home, and built a community here long before our present town. Now, be it resolved, I, John F. Johnston, Mayor of the City of Ojai, do hereby proclaim September 27th. One reason I'm pulling this in right now is you're watching the calendar. We almost missed it. But we have two folks here that I knew their father, and I have been acquainted with them, and Julie and Patrick and Vincent, rest his soul, are here. And Julie honors us at almost every public event with an introduction and a little history of the people who inhabited the valley long before any of us or our ancestors even thought about it. So Julie, you want to say a few words?
As you say, Mayor Johnson, the longest journey starts with the first step, and this is long in coming. So I'm honored to be here and receiving this proclamation, and it is, we've worked very hard, and sometimes against odds, But it's the way that we have to work in this world today to help people understand why Ojai and why California. So Native peoples have been in these lands for thousands of years, and it's why people want to live in California. It's why there are so many laws put in place to protect California and its environment, and to go back and just step back not very long ago, less than 200 years ago, that our Native families were here in this land, in these villages that dotted this entire valley, from the upper valley all the way to the river and beyond, and how we still have much of our sacred landscape still intact. How we can still look at Ojai, despite the arundo, despite the, I love eucalyptus, don't get me wrong, but they believe in Australia. But our oak trees, our beloved oak trees, all of our animals just about are still here in our world, in which make up our cultural landscape. What we need to do is slow down. What we need to do is slow down because our valley is not that big. And why we advocate so much is that is such an important part of who we are as Native peoples. We wouldn't be Native peoples if it wasn't for the survival and everything that Creator and Mother Earth gave us to survive on for all those thousands of years. And we are bound to honor Mother Earth. And so we are right in this time right here for the Chumash people. In tradition, this is our Thanksgiving, this time, at the end of August into September. And so Hutash, Mother Earth, provided us with everything we needed. And in return, we promised to have virtues. We promised to remember the children and the elders and to remind them not to forget one another. And I think that Ojai has a wonderful opportunity, and I challenge everybody in this community to remind themselves of that we, as we had evidence of the climate strike in Libby Park with all those young ones that are here, that are desperate for us to step up. So we need to step up for them and for ourselves, because we're still all here too. We can't give up. So I thank you. I thank you for that, for all your efforts that you're doing. It is a lot of work that we're all doing, so if we can do it more closer together, it'd be wonderful. We thank you.
Okay, I think I'm going to bring this around, and since we wanted. We'll come around, go ahead.
Haku. Good evening, everybody. I want to thank everybody here that's attending this council meeting tonight. I want to thank the council members, mayor, the community of Ojai. This really means a lot to us. One of the things about my father was to try to preserve and recognize the tribe as a people within this valley and within our nation. And I'm sure he certainly would be proud of everybody here as he's looking down upon us. And that's about the end of it, but thank you.
I grew up with Julie and Pat.
Come on.
Wait.
Get in there.
Columbus Day's next.
Lovely.
County Ventura did it. This morning, Ventura County declared Columbus Day Indigenous Peoples' Day.
City Sundance.
And your next. Thank you all very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
I just say that because
Yeah. Easy to do.
Okay, should we take the consent agenda?
Yeah.
We have 10 minutes before public comments, so do we have a motion, or do we already have a motion to approve everything but, right?
H and I.
Everything, okay, who would like to take H?
I would.
Okay.
I would. That we're pulling H from the consent calendar. This is a letter to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors and Agricultural Commission requesting advanced public notification of aerial pesticide application time, location, and amount. and I don't have any problem with that. We should have at least 72-hour notice, but, and I apologize, I only read this a couple of hours ago, but I immediately called up my in-house experts, Renee Roth and Patty Pagelen, because I had concerns that some of the information might not be accurate. And I also felt the wording of the letter was weak, because it made it sound, and I don't know if the whole council will agree with me, but I don't want to sound like I approve of this spraying at all, because I definitely do not. So I would like to give Patty and Renee Roth, if they're willing, opportunity to help me address the concerns, and then I'll make a motion to see if you and I can be a little committee to maybe review the material.
So you're asking for that matter to be continued?
Yes,
Okay, so
yeah.
if there's any objection to that, if not, the city manager and Souza will form a subcommittee and bring this back, at the next meeting?
Yes, but could Patty make a statement to
Sure,
clarify?
yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing this important information. One of the big concerns with the letter to the county regarding notification, it has some inaccurate information. The preemptive clause takes power away from local municipalities, and there was some information in that letter that stated that there was power given to the counties, or that the power rested with the counties. So actually, the power is left at the state level. So we will be working to overturn that, but in the meantime, the advance notification should cover not only the aerial spraying, but all pesticide spraying in the orchards. It should be included in the advance notification. Residents, especially in the East End, are at risk and are exposed to dangerously high levels of pesticides in the air that they're breathing. And just as Councilmember Blatz was pointing out, the air is trapped in our valley, and we really know that the air quality is the second worst in Ventura County. So we don't want to add to that every 3 or 4 months the amount of toxic chemicals that are being put into the air. The residents do have a right to know the pesticides that are being used by the growers and when and where they will be spraying. All commercial growers will be spraying again starting September 30th. This will be the third time this year. It will be a 3-week period, and this is called the Area-Wide Management Plan. That is a treatment plan for the ACP, the Asian citrus psyllid. So I don't know if all of you were aware of that. I don't know if the town is aware of how much is being sprayed and how often. Tim Malloy of UCLA recently addressed how the state and ag commissioners are failing us by not looking at the cumulative effects of pesticide spraying and not following CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, guidelines to use least toxic pesticides. So if you want more information, please go to the website transition-2-organics.org. And I just wanted to remind everybody again about our town hall meeting this Saturday at 3 to 6 at Matilaha Auditorium.
Okay.
Could I have that copy?
Thank you. And I would like to acknowledge, for those who in the audience who weren't here at our last meeting, Laura Ward presented this to the council. It was another thing from the newspaper and the editorials as things that need some attention. And Randy suggested that the city prepare a letter to go to the council with much of the content that the newspaper had researched. So anyway, thanks everybody, and you'll bring that back in 2 weeks?
Yes, yes.
And, we wouldn't have it had it ahead of the next spraying anyway, wouldn't we? So, okay. So we're continuing that matter. And Bill, did you have?
Yeah, I would just like to request that we pull the supportive veto of SB 13. Not asking that we endorse SB 13, just that we not endorse vetoing it, for the following 2 reasons. This is the Senator Wyskowski who's been instrumental in addressing issues of affordability with excessive connection charges for accessory dwelling units. And there's two things in here that I think are something we've been in favor of, actually. One is, for example, that there are still special districts putting connection fees on existing laterals where you're building a new ADU rather than converting one. And this bill says it will prohibit, if it's less than 750 square feet, from having an additional impact fee. So that's an important affordability issue. Also, it specifically says that if we have ADU spaces in our community, we can count those towards our RENA. This bill will state that a local agency may count an accessory dwelling unit for purposes of identifying adequate sites for housing in accordance with these provisions, which is a low-impact way of meeting RENA. So I would at least request that we not endorse the veto and just be neutral.
Okay.
Support that.
I just have one question on this. All of these recommendations came from the League of California City.
Yeah.
And my concern is the fact that we never even talked about them in-house. So I would go along with the 100% bill. Because we haven't had a dialogue, we're just accepting the fact that someone sent it down to us and said, these are the ones that we want to veto, and these are the ones we want to approve. So I don't have any problem if we don't go along with any of it. If we just
I'm
table
only
it
requesting
and...
SB 13, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my request.
Okay, so would you state that again?
That we not send a letter requesting or supporting a veto of SB 13.
Okay.
That we be neutral.
I just want to clarify that I think, Councilmember Haney, one of the problems is that the legislative cycle ends and it is a mess at the end in Sacramento. Things move very quickly, and if we get a lot of alerts that we don't have time to have council meetings before. So I'm in agreement, but I also appreciate that the staff has been doing everything they can.
Yeah, I've read the
Because
other
like at
ones and I'm-
VCOG and when some of these other agencies are at, some of these things, I mean, I just got notice of last week and things had changed since then, and I know the staff is doing their best to try and accommodate some of these organizations that help us lobby in Sacramento for stuff that's important for us. So just want to make sure that's clear. Sometimes we got to move a little faster than we get a chance to all sit down and talk about it.
Okay, Bill, you're not saying you want to endorse it, you just don't want to oppose it?
I just don't want us to be supporting the veto, just neutral.
Okay, so we have a motion for that.
I'll second
Do we have a
that.
second? We got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, is there?
And I will say our policy on this board has been pretty consistent that we want to be as open to the use of ADUs on properties as we can that is legally appropriate and can reduce costs to improve housing in the valley and specifically in the city. So I think this is consistent with that.
Okay. So do we need a roll call on that, or?
No, consensus is fine, and I'll just add, if I can, that assuming, there's some expectation that SB 13 will be signed. If it is signed, we'll be bringing forward looking at amendments to the ADU ordinance to the Planning Commission and Council.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any objection to Bill's motion? If not, staff is directed to change.
To not do
the-
something.
Yeah, we're good at that, you know, that should be an easy. But- Okay, we are now at the bewitching hour, where we get bewitched by the audience. It is public comment time. This is a time when anybody who wishes to address the council on any subject that's not already listed on the agenda. If it's on the agenda, then we ask that you wait until the item is called, and then you'll have an opportunity to speak. So this is the time to let us know what you think and what you think we should be doing. So I've got 5 cards, and the first one is from Melanie Larkin. Melanie, I thought I saw you earlier. Oh, there you are in the back. How do you pronounce that?
John, is that John?
Yeah,
John Milo
okay.
or John Milo?
Yeah. Okay, I see a hand out there. John, you're on deck. There's this chair up here in front. Okay, Melanie.
Sousa already did a pretty great job of talking about this event that we've got coming up next week. It's the Ride and Roll event. So we did this in honor of Clean Air Day on the 2nd. as well as it's National Ride and Walk Day. So we wanted to encourage students to ride to school, or if you want to ride to work, also encouraged. So we're doing trains at various schools. The police are supporting us. The city and Complete Streets is supporting us. And then also the big thing, we're having the critical mass ride on October 6th at 2 p.m. We're starting at the Park and Ride across from Vaughn's and then riding all the way down Ojai Ave to Libby Park. And then we'll have a big celebration at Topa Topa Brewing and with Sama Sama Food. Obviously, they're together. So if you want to come and support or just want to hang out, have some food with us, that would be great. And the big request, I guess, at this point, we've had tons of people donate bicycles so that kids can ride to school. We had about, I think at this point, we're up to about 30 bicycles, which was amazing. And we had a class, the shop class, with, I think his name is Fenway. His 10 students repaired 10 bikes there. We had mechanics from Bicycles of Ojai and the Mob Shop help us repair some bikes so that we can give those away this coming weekend to students that did not have them. So in addition to those, we've had about 15 bicycle helmets, but we are still in need of a few more. So if the council or anyone here would like to help donate some helmets so that kids can ride safely, that would be great. And you can contact me at contact@OhioValleyGreenCoalition.org, and we would love to just have some more helmets so that people can ride safely. In addition, we'd like to support also Patty's event, which is coming up on Saturday, the town hall meeting. Yeah, Sousa has the flyer. We're partnering with Transition to Organics to help put that on. So we hope to see everyone there. We can talk about pesticides, regenerative agriculture in our valley. Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
see you
Thank
guys.
you, Melanie. Okay. John, you're up, and is it Mariko Gifford? If I've said that correctly, you're next after John. Here, Gail.
Yes, good evening. My name is John Milo. I've been a resident and a property owner of Ojai for about 4 years now. I own the building at 407A Bryant Circle, and I would like to make a tentative proposal to help relocate the homeless in front of my building. I'm submitting a list of alternative campsites for that currently occupied Bryant Circle. The motor homes have been there for almost 2.5 years now, okay? There's photographs there. The photographs of my building, you can see that it's well kept. It's a beautiful building. I like to think it's the most beautiful office building in the city of Ojai. I really do. It's a beautiful building. The police chief has told me that the homeless have a constitutional right, according to the 9th District Court, to camp out on the street. And I have no problem with that. I think that's fine. May I propose that the campers be given the opportunity to move their vehicles to other sites in the city and give the property owners and business owners in my building a vacation from time to time of the impacts of their occupancy. Chief Freihoff has indicated to me that the campers are welcome at, I call it Soule.
Okay.
Sadie.
I'm from San Francisco. The Soule family is very famous in San Francisco as being a steel company, along with Bethlehem Steel and American Steel, and then there was Soule Steel. But it's sold. That's fine, okay? Where there are adequate sanitary facilities and cooking facilities. Last week, one of the occupants, this is terrible, one of the occupants of the homeless motorhomes came onto my patio outside my conference room in my building and proceeded to drop her pants and have a bowel movement onto the flower bed as shown in the attached photos. The interesting thing is that I was conducting a business meeting at the time with 3 potential clients. Very upsetting. I asked that the council direct the city manager and the Department of Public Works to assist me in developing a comprehensive list of acceptable camping sites within the city of Ojai that can be distributed to the homeless and campers. I would also appreciate assistance contacting the county agencies to request they allow campers to stay overnight at Soul Park with the daily fee of $2 being waived. I see no constitutional difference allowing them to stay overnight at the beautiful park. It's the most beautiful park I've ever seen, by the way. I just love it, okay? As opposed to a public street. I'm available to meet with the city manager at their convenience. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. And for everyone's benefit who isn't familiar with this process, Pardon me, my mic's off. I said, for those of you who are not familiar with the process, under public comment, we allow 3 minutes, which everybody is respecting very nicely, and the city council cannot take any action unless an item comes before us and is announced under the Brown Act. So we're not just ignoring you when, by not giving you feedback tonight. The city manager, I'm sure, took some notes. Okay, Mariko?
Yes. Thank you for
And
hearing
Patty,
my,
you're on deck.
Oh, sorry.
thank you for hearing my comments. I wanted to comment on the climate emergency task force that you have implemented. So many years ago, about 15 years ago, I was privileged to be president of the Resource Conservation District in San Diego, and we had at that time an emergency that we dealt with, the quarantine of a Mediterranean fruit fly. And I discovered that California didn't have an emergency plan for agriculture, the largest state in agriculture. And I also discovered that the worst time to create an action plan is during an emergency. And the best time to make an action plan is also during an emergency, because you then know exactly what to do. You eliminate all of the fluff, and everything you take also, every action you take can also point to a lot of the breakdowns. And so one of the things that we learned was that there wasn't even a common language what emergency is. And that is the fundamental issue with the climate emergency right now, that we don't even have what that really means. So I looked up the definition of emergency, and I'm going to read that. An incident to be an emergency conforms to one or more of the following: if it poses an immediate threat to life, health, property, or environment, has already caused loss of life, health detriments, property damage, or environmental damage, has a high probability of escalating to cause immediate danger to health, life, property, or environment. In the United States, most states mandate that a notice be printed in each telephone book that requires that someone must relinquish use of a phone line if a person requests the use of a telephone line, such as a party line, and this is how old that definition is, to report an emergency. State statutes typically define an emergency as a condition where life, health, property is in jeopardy and prompt summoning of aid is essential. While most emergency services agree on protecting human life, human health, life, and property, the environmental impacts are not considered sufficiently important by some agencies. This also extends to areas such as animal welfare, where some emergency organizations cover this element through the property definition, where animals owned by a person are threatened, though this does not cover wild animals. This means that some agencies do not mount an emergency response where it endangers wild animals or environment, though others respond to such incidents such as oil spills at sea that threaten marine life. The attitude of the agencies involved is likely to reflect the predominant opinion of the government of the area. Some emergencies do not immediately endanger life, health, or property, but do affect the natural environment and creatures living within it. Not all agencies consider this a genuine emergency, but it can have far-reaching effects on animals and the long-term condition of the land. This is exactly word for word what an emergency is. So I want to point out, when your group is working on this issue, that they start with, and this is what I experienced, definition of a term, because we don't have a current definition of what climate emergency really is. And if we don't start with that, you don't have a behavior that's appropriate, you don't have action that's appropriate. One of the things that we did was scenario planning 10 years out, which is now what we're seeing. That could be the drop dead point of not being able to reverse it. So halfway points and halfway points all the way along, and it brings it down to having an emergency plan by this Friday. And if you have that as a plan where you see this as an emergency, you would see that your behavior would be completely different if you knew that by Friday you needed to have a plan of action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Patty, did you? Okay, you wait. Jack Weber? Jack, are you still here? Does it speak during public comment, or was that what you wanted to do, or did you have something later on the? Oh.
Okay. Hold on, Johnny. Let's start the clock in. We started it.
Hi, council members. I'm going to read quickly. I have a lot to say. Johnny, I'm going to address some of the two-stroke motor comments that you mentioned, so just go with the flow here. If y'all made it out to the climate strike on Friday, you heard the voices of Ojai's youth. Johnny, Susan, Bill, thank you for coming out and even making speeches. It was wonderful. I was at the strike and was blown away by the passion and courage of the children. All ages came out, from toddlers to nonagenarians. It was the most meaningful group gathering I've ever attended, and that strike did something to me that I still carry. If any of you missed it, you can come out this Friday. We're doing it again from 3 to 5. But the truth is, our children shouldn't have to be out there on the street crying for their lives. Recent peer-reviewed science shows that the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, projections themselves are overly conservative and undershooting the crisis, meaning we don't have 11 years to phase out fossil fuels. We're actually in no man's land. No one really knows how much time we have, and anything can happen at any moment because there's severe tipping points on which we're right in the vicinity of. A new comprehensive study from the world's leading climate science organizations presented to the UN just this week shows that we're far behind the Paris Accord targets, which are themselves not even enough to save us from the worst of climate crisis. In other words, please work at breakneck speed to make the changes we need. Tonight, I reinforce my testimony from 2 weeks ago, encouraging you to pick the low-hanging fruit first, which are the two-stroke motors used for gardening, which by the early 2020s, check this out, which by the early 2020s are projected to produce more pollution than the entire automobile sector in California. Let me read you a quick summary. Operating the best-selling commercial lawnmower for 1 hour emits as much pollution as driving a Toyota Camry approximately the distance from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, 300 miles. The best-selling commercial leaf blower in 1 hour of operation emits smog-forming pollution comparable to driving a Camry 1,100 miles. 1 hour of leaf blower is equivalent to 1,100 miles of driving a Camry, approximately a distance from LA to Denver. I'll be sending you the citation by email attached to the more in-depth summary I compiled, which I've decided not to read tonight. I'll also be sending specific recommendations for, quote, dumping the dirty and boosting the beautiful here in Ojai. I encourage you to stand out from the pack as a world leader in regenerative change and to hand our children a future worth going to school for. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. We have one more card. Beverly, I thought you were at the birthday party.
It just became later and later. I just wanted to thank the City Council for allowing the Children's Memorial Garden to start outside on the land of the City Hall. It's in between the City Hall and the demonstration garden. And I hope all of you in the community understands that this is not only a children's memorial, because everyone's a child of someone. And we hope that the community will come out and use it as a place that they can sit and remember somebody in their family or a child or a friend. And so it truly is a community garden. And we hope to finish it within a year. And we hope to raise some money so we can finish it in a year. And I'm just very thankful to the council for letting this go through, especially James Vega, who worked on the Memorandum of Understanding. I think he was delightful. That's the only word I have, delightful to work with. And I thank him, truly thank him. Thank you again.
Thank you, Beverly.
Just one quick word.
Bill.
I just want to deeply appreciate your efforts too. You know, I mean, it's so wonderful to see a sense of care and taking care of back over there because, and I don't mean this facetiously, somebody to look over the fish. you know, that somehow have survived all this time with
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
know.
neglect. So I'm so glad you're taking that on. And it might even help the mental health of staff, right? Have a little place to go to and
Absolutely.
meditate about, ponder, you know, how to do things well. So thank you very
May I
much.
ask a
welcome.
question?
You're welcome.
Beverly, I have a question. This is a question other people may have. Is the memorial garden at the Wine that was founded by Pat Weinberger, that will remain there?
It's going to remain there, as far as we know, as far as we predict, for a while. We wanted to create the inclusive memorial first before we tackled that project. Perhaps there's going to be room for the markers to go into the memorial space, but we can't assure that to the public until we work on the inclusive memorial.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes the public comment section, and we reordered the agenda in order to take up the Creek Road. Is that correct, Bill?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so would the city manager have any introductory remarks here?
Just very, very brief that we've discussed the Creek Road issue in the past. We've noted in the report that we have taken some actions related to it, including writing letters to the County Board of Supervisors urging safety enhancements, and letters to Waze and Google as well, asking them to make changes to their applications. We've also started to refresh the no truck signs on Creek to try to draw attention to those. And as noted in the staff report, we have some recommendations for additional signage and a radar, one of those signs with the radar feedback as well on Creek Road. And that's all.
May I make a request?
Yes.
That the Creek Road residents, this is an official request, that the Creek Road residents be allowed to do a slideshow presentation.
Sure, if it's not an epic. Yeah, you know, a 3 or 4 reeler.
I reviewed it in just a few minutes. It was very good.
Okay, sure.
Do we need to dim lights? No.
That's something else. That's something else, Bill. There we go. Yeah.
That's still something else.
Creek
That's
Road
not
traffic.
Oh, the other one, Jeremy?
There we go, it's working.
That's not it?
No.
Jeremy, can you change the presentation?
It's got the right
Got the right
date.
date on it, so.
This really is like at the movies.
Sergeant Town
A
Planning.
lengthy introduction before the main feature here.
That's not it. That's not it?
No.
Adjournment. Just, that popped up there quick.
There we go.
Here we are.
All right. You got too many things going on.
Is that too dark?
Is it snowing on Creek Road?
That was a snowing on Creek Road picture. It's so hard to find one. So thank you for hearing us again today. We're here to talk again about Creek Road and tell you why we're back. We're here to share what changes have been made to Creek Road to date. There has been some action to identify what remains to be done to resolve this safety and traffic concern, to identify why the county's current and pending changes fall short, and to seek a much-needed full resolution, because this is actually a 20-year-old problem within the Ojai Valley. We're also here to request that the Ojai City Council send an additional letter to the county, to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors and to Caltrans. The county has agreed and sent out this notification that they are doing 3 safety improvements on Creek Road. This was sent from Supervisor Bennett's office. Their first safety improvement is to reduce the speed limit from 45 to 40 on the southerly 2.75 miles of Creek Road, as is stated in the county letter. Secondly, they are to install lane dividers along the straightaway by Kenowa and Teowa. and Kiowa. And thirdly, they are installing curve warning signs south of Encino. Here's pictures of what they've done. On the lower right is the red wall and the curve warning signs. The upper right is the lane delineators that they are proposing to put in through Kenua and Teowa. And on the left are the installation of the stop signs. The lower image on the left shows that the 45-mile-an-hour sign actually is being placed at 2.23 miles on the mile marker, not 2.75, as was noted by the county. An update on our collision data. We've had 22 accidents this year in 2019, and we're at a rate of 2.5 per month. Last year, we were at a rate of 2 per month. What I'd really like to note in this is we pull our data from SWITTers. Highway Patrol, Sheriff's Department sends their accident data to SWITTers. Sacramento pulls these reports for us, and when we pull this report, as requested from SWITTers, they send a copy to the County of Ventura, a copy of what we've requested. So they are getting this data also. However, their decision is limited to including TIMS data, Traffic Injury Management System data, which only looks at accidents that have occurred with an injury or a fatality. So when you look at the data that we have right now, first of all, we've got two things that start slipping through the cracks. We only have 19 reported accidents, but we have documentation for 3 additional accidents, including the water truck that turned over. Already we have SWITTers data that's not 100%, and in addition to that, only 8 of the 22 accidents would be recognized by the county in order to make their decisions about improving safety on Creek Road. We need to revisit this. This is a 20-year-old problem, and I've provided each of you council members and Mayor Johnston with 4 copies of articles that were written in Ojai Valley News. These date back as late as 2002 and 2004, and I hope that each of you had a chance to breeze through them or at least read them, because it should bring our recollection back that back in 2002, we were already having city meetings that were stalled because residents, many of us probably that were here before, were resisting the idea of Creek Road being used as a bypass to Highway 33. This has been debated for 20 years at this point. So if you haven't had a chance to read those articles, it would be appreciated if you would, because I think it does lend a wider picture and a more historic picture that this is really a battle we've been fighting for a long time. What really struck out to me when I found those old articles is that the last valley-wide traffic circulation study is more than 15 years old. A lot has changed in 15 years in the Ojai Valley. What I'd like to remind everybody is that in 2002 and 2004, we were complaining as citizens that we didn't want Creek Road used as a bypass, and that overall traffic in the valley had kind of come to a head and people were complaining about it. So then we kind of have the recession, we have the recession. The recession hits, it hits everyone hard, and then the city of Ojai embarks upon this marketing journey of marketing Ojai to kind of bring everything back, start getting some vitality back to the town. But we never revisited the traffic study, and we never revisited the complaints from 2002 to 2004 where people were pushing back at this idea. Really, how we can really note how much traffic is coming into the Ojai Valley is if we look at 2002, when we first started complaining that traffic in the valley is too much and that we need some plan to deal with it, we had a TOT tax, or our gross tax revenues from our bed tax, were at $1.66 million. We are double that now. And we never relooked at traffic. We never relooked at a traffic circulation study, and guess what? Quietly in the background, the county has actually been making Creek Road the bypass that we all stood up and said no to. They've increased the speed through the park zone. There have been quiet little subtle changes to the road that have really encouraged that road to be a bypass, not discourage it. Additionally, the county has kind of come up recently with some data saying that there's a county-wide year-over-year traffic volume as a county-wide average of 3.6%, and they're using that as justification that Creek Road is in line with the county average. Our average year-over-year annual growth rate of traffic on Creek Road is 3.65% on the upper section and 3.29%. When I add up all of these county-maintained roads that you can see on this chart, that does not average up to 3.6%. And what I'd like to note is a county-wide average is an irrelevant number to look at. We've had very little residential development and growth in the Ojai Valley. So according to our traffic engineer, our year-over-year number should be pretty flat or minuscule. And when you look at the other roads listed here within the other Ojai Valley, it strikes me as interesting because really the two other roads that are complaining about traffic, especially on their streets, are Villanova, which you can see through data, actually being used as a cut through to the highway. Their increase is 3.34%, but you can also see like the reduction of minus 5.25 at Grand. That's because we had that other work that was going on at the San Antonio Creek Bridge quite a ways back, so that year-over-year volume's a little odd. And also there was construction that makes that Baldwin Road data point a little odd also, but you can see that our traffic, other than Creek Road absorbing a lot of it, and Villanova Road absorbing a lot of it, is actually pretty minuscule or flat. We want you to help us reduce Creek Road as being used as the bypass to the freeway, and it's right now being used as the main route in and out of Ojai. We would like Caltrans to place a directional sign near Creek Road and the highway. In this picture, what we have asked for is a sign, on that sign that you see in the image, to say the City of Ojai, restaurants, shopping, and the business districts are straight ahead. Right now, what we still have is Google Maps, Waze, leading people down Creek Road to get to Ojai. The county's response to our request, they did do something, and what they did was put in a request for Caltrans to put a sign that says Ojai 4 miles ahead or whatever the mileage ends up being, but they've placed the sign in a place that it's really not helpful. It's way back beyond the bridge at going over San Antonio Creek, and it's placed actually just past Sulphur Mountain Road, a third of a mile to a half a mile away from the intersection that it would really do some good at. We would also, we're here to talk about what remains to be done and reduce and eliminate the illegal passing on the other parts of Creek Road. I don't know if I can actually play this, but this is actually a video within this slide, and it shows you that this car is actually passing this car. The county has agreed that they're going to put up lane delineators or paddles along the straightaway from Kennewa and Teowa. As I've heard from neighbors that come and talk to me about this issue, what we're all concerned about, and I think it's a good point, is that when you put up those lane delineators just on the straightaway, that it's going to push the passing to other more dangerous areas of Creek Road. We don't know how to deal with the county in putting these lane delineators in spots that are actually going to do good, because there's many driveways along Creek Road, and what we see right here is people passing in odd spots. Councilmember Haney saw a cement truck that after you come around the sharp curve just past the park, he saw a cement truck get passed on the inside left as he was making a left-hand turn to go to the stables where Ojai Valley Inn used to have their horses. So that's the kind of driving that we are getting on Creek Road, because it is the bypass. And while we've asked for it since 2002 to not be, what we see is continual evidence that it is being used that way. Oh, am I going the wrong way? Oops, sorry.
I really like that sign, that City of Ojai.
I think that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's a common sign, too, that you see lots of places, and it would do the trick, and I would think that Caltrans would be happy to place it. But the sign that the county requested on our behalf does not solve the problem.
Yeah.
Additionally, the county in this spot is putting up lane delineators. but they're doing nothing to address that we have this wide median on the right-hand side where people are often walking or parking, and we either have people passing or we have people walking or pulling over so that somebody else can pass. But what we truly need to make the lane delineators functional or useful is to put something on the right shoulder so that people could still park on those ends of those streets, but that you can't pull over to pass. Otherwise, we're not really resolving the problem. We would like to request no trucks the full length of Creek Road and expand the ordinance. And I know that the city of Ojai does already have an ordinance for their section of Creek Road, but we've been getting different information from the county as to what's going to happen on the remainder of the road. We had a water truck that fell over on Creek Road. Apparently, it wasn't even speeding. There was some rumor that it may have been passed by a smaller motorcycle or something, but that could have been chemicals coming out of Bentley Ranch. That could have been a lot of different things. And the problem with Creek Road is that it lacks banking. It was never banked for the curves to be driven at the high rate of speed that they're currently marked at. So this is what we have as a problem, is when you have a truck that's got a sloshy load in it, he's going to flip over. We don't need trucks on Creek Road. There's no commercial activity. There is nothing for them to go to from the Highway 33 all the way to the city, and this is still not being addressed by the county, in our opinion. Really, this is the big problem, and why we're asking for the city of Ojai to deal with it is because a big part of the problem is Ojai Valley Inn, and for that, you do have responsibility. So this is a picture of trucks that I followed down Creek Road that are delivering many cars to an event at Ojai Valley Inn, but they came all the way down Creek Road. They came up Country Club in those giant trucks on that curvy road, and then they blocked the roadway in order to offload for the afternoon. All deliveries for Ojai Valley Inn need to be made through Highway 33, and we're asking specifically that you ask them to do that. We would like to reduce the speed limit on Creek Road, one speed the whole way, 40 miles an hour for the remaining stretch of road. What we see here is, I know, the speed limit should be 40 miles an hour. It's currently set 40 to either 2.23 or 2.2 or 2.75 miles. But if you can kind of see from here, as you're going from the highway to here, it's 40 miles an hour. Then you kick up from 45. This is the incorrect place sign. This is where it should be placed. But you can see the 45 to the 40, which is basically Brian Archer's house, that house in the creek. That's the only stretch that you can actually go from 45 down to 40. And keep in mind, you're in a curve zone, so you're under an advisory to be going lower there anyway. How the county has approached the segmenting of Creek Road doesn't make scientific sense. It doesn't make traffic engineering sense. It doesn't make common sense. And it's inaccurate per their own communications. That's just, sorry, let me go back. This is a fairly busy slide, but it tells you that we're marking where the road signs are and how far apart they are. And when you start getting into placement of signs, speed limit or speed advisory signs, and they are very close in proximity to one another, there shouldn't be a need to increase speed 5 miles an hour. What we're showing here is these stop signs and stoplights within the Ojai Valley and why people are bypassing them and using Highway 30 or using Creek Road to bypass Highway 33. I think the important thing is that if you see in this sign, we have 9 stoplights now down the main drag. So the highway is no longer the highway, but yet Creek Road, which parallels the highway, has no stop signs and has become the highway and is continued to be used as the highway. We're pointing out the stop signs at Rice Road in Alvaria and Rice Road in Camille Drive because those 2 stop signs are non-warranted, were placed by the county in order to prevent drag racing. We've been asking for probably 4 months to provide us with the warrants for installation of those stop signs because we believe that we have similar warrant justification for Creek Road and we have not been provided that information. But I think all of you on the city council, you understand that Ojai's a valley, right? We are a valley going from one area up here all the way down here. We are a bedroom community, as you know, and so these people, by allowing no stop signs on Creek Road and just continuing the mindset that we need a free-flowing traffic, is continuing its use as a bypass, and it's the place for aggressive driving. What we're asking for you today, because we've already asked a lot, what I would first like to say before we even ask anything more, I would like to appreciate each of you, because dealing with the county and dealing with the city of Ojai has been a very stark contrast in community and relationships and knowing people and being able to, at the very least, know that this complex situation is being heard in earnest, and that we believe that you have our safety and interest in mind. So first, please know that you're very appreciated just for listening to us and giving us a second opportunity to come back and say why we feel like the things that have been done are still inadequate, and being willing to listen to a secondary request. What we're asking of you today is to write a letter to the County of Ventura. What we have been told very, very specifically by the Roads Department at the County of Ventura is that we are not going to hit the mark for a technical reason for doing all that we are asking for on Creek Road, and that this is a political will decision. The reason why is because, as we have been told by the county, right, they're looking at Tim's data. We're looking at Switter's data. You know, we're not even on the same page in terms of data that can be looked at. We've gone round and round with the county roads department. We've gone round and round with Bennett's office. We don't think that we're getting anywhere. As you had written a letter to Google and Maps, Google and Waze, the city of Ojai received a reply. That reply from Google and Waze said, reduce the speed limit, and that will help it become a lesser priority road. The County of Ventura says that they haven't even received a reply. So the ducking of engaging with us in the same way that the city of Ojai has been is not the same experience. And we would like to ask you that really we revisit what we talked about in 2002 and 2004. We've had no circulation study done in this valley. People have been complaining about traffic as a chronic, systemic problem. We're talking about adding ADUs, growth, whatever. Great, we need all of that, right? But you know what we also need? We need some stop signs on Creek Road. We need some common sense. We need the lane delineators. And we have all these other things. We've been the wildlife corridor. We have deers dying. There is no reason that Creek Road should be made this default freeway, and that's really what it is right now. We have a problem where we have bike riders down there, and it's dangerous for the cars that are even trying to navigate around the bikes because there's no shared bike lane. So one of my neighbors, right, she's coming around a corner and another car coming towards her is trying to go around a group of bicyclists, but she almost got hit straight on. So it's very dangerous in many ways, and we need complete resolution. I've been here before you. I had to watch poor Adan Laura die, right? This is no new situation. This is a 20-year-old problem. And for us to be incrementally nipping away with little, I don't want to say little, because they've been significant changes. But it's not a fix, and we need it fixed because these incremental things, they just kick the ball down the road and they don't really resolve the problem that we're having. We would like for you to encourage the Board of Supervisors, and what we are asking for very specifically is that this is a request of the Board of Supervisors, not Supervisor Bennett as one individual, but the entire Board of Supervisors to listen to this issue and to vote on it or have some consideration of a wider issue. All of this has been siloed within Supervisor Bennett's office, and again, his efforts are appreciated, certainly, but they are still too far short for the problem that we have and the size of problem that we have. It's a big problem, not a little problem, and it's truly a valley-wide problem, not just for the Creek Road residents. We would like for you to encourage that the Board of Supervisors puts in 3 stop signs, one at Hermosa, one at Country Club, and one at Encino. We would like to request that the no truck ordinance, because those trucks are coming down Creek Road and coming to Ojai Valley Inn, we would like that the county makes the ordinance the full length of no trucks, and they may be doing that, but they need some encouragement and to know that we want a totality of all of these fixes. We also want to prevent the passing on other spaces of Creek Road, not just with the placement of the delineators along the straightaway. So we need some mechanism for where do we place these? Is it a public complaint situation that we place them in other spots? Because placing them in the straightaway, I do agree with other neighbors that have said it's just going to push the passing to other spots of Creek Road, because we do see that already. We would also like increased safety for bicyclists, horses, pedestrians, and others sharing the road. It's very difficult to walk. It's difficult to walk your dogs, much less we have not seen a horse on Creek Road for quite some time. We would like to have the Ojai City Council write a very poignant letter to the Ojai Valley Inn and request that all of their deliveries be delivered to Ojai Valley Inn via Highway 33. This includes all of their linen deliveries, which come on the weekends. This includes the beverage companies that come and deliver, all their specialty decorations and things. Those are all coming down Creek Road, in addition to the trucks that are delivering Subaru cars or whatever else for events. Those are all going down Creek Road. We would like also a letter to Caltrans specific for the sign placed at the beginning of Creek Road and Highway 33 that says the City of Ojai restaurants and the retail district is straight ahead. It needs to be placed on the sign that we specifically showed you, not 1/3 of a mile down in the flatlands, which still counts as Casita Springs. That's it. Thank you.
Please, happy fingers. No applause or boos in the audience. I appreciate that if you, nice presentation. Okay. We have some cards. Michael Shapiro with Robin Gerber on deck.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Michael Shapiro, Ojai. I've attended a number of the MAC meetings where this has been a major part of the agenda. And I was distressed to see when the minutes of the MAC meeting were distributed, they were completely different than what actually happened. Things were misstated, things were left out, so much so that to me, the old Shakespeare expression, something's rotten in Denmark, something was rotten, whoever's behind this. So it's as if there's a conspiracy not to tell the truth, not to be accurate. So you have your work cut out for you, because somewhere, somehow, someone doesn't want the Creek Road residents to enact all the changes they would like to have for their own safety and welfare. So you have that extra burden, it seems to me. I don't know why, but that's my observation, and I think it's very genuine. I'm sorry to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Robin Gerber is up, and is it James Verkrill? I'm not sure if we've got the last name. Okay, Robin.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as you know, I'm on the board of Seafrog, and we have been advocating, because of the lease that is operating above the city, the drilling lease, and the trucks that come out of that lease, which they were permitted last January to have 2 trucks a day. And as we know, flaring, even though they had done that illegally previously, so we're dealing with a company that I would say is not highly trustworthy, that portion of Creek Road, which the city owns, should be shut to truck traffic. And Tina's absolutely right. The whole road should be shut, but you all shouldn't feel helpless in terms of waiting on the county. And yes, send a letter. That's great. But also, a piece of Creek Road, as Mr. Wyrick has been researching, and I think Mr. Vega has as well, is within your control. And so you can stop right now, or as soon as you can get an ordinance passed, the passage of trucks on that portion, which I believe also would put more pressure on the county to shut the rest of the road, and at least would ensure that those trucks that are carrying toxic materials right here, just beyond this building, would not be able to come out onto Creek Road. So I would encourage you to do more than send letters, although that's great. Actually take action, take that road and do something to really make people safe. So thank you.
Thank you, Robin. James.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, my wife and I have been Ojai Valley residents our whole lives. And we've lived there on Creek Road, a corner of Kenowa Street and Creek Road, since 1976. I do have to tell her that you can't, you have to have some alternate way for the roads, because I know the laws when it comes to truck access, so you cannot restrict local access if there's no other route going there. But this month, my wife and I coming back from Ventura for doctor's appointments, we've had to go emergency braking twice for people passing through the curves, twice. I've seen a semi-truck with 45-foot flatbed loaded with big, large plastic pipe, no doubt going to Aquaflow in the east end of the valley. I'm guessing that he had to go up Hermosa and then pull back on the highway there. And I've also seen 2 3-axle tour buses, the Greyhound style type tour buses, also going down Creek Road, who also had to turn and go up Hermosa, because that's right there at Camp Comfort. The other thing is on that speed limit, I highly encourage you to put, whatever pressure the city council can on the county supervisors just to make it 40 miles an hour all the way. The 2.75 mile marker would have got the 40 mile an hour limit past the residential areas of Kenowa, Kiowa, and whatever the other one is. There's 3 streets right there. That would have got it 40 past there. But to allow it then to go to 45, my wife and I walk Creek Road on a regular basis. We pick up a lot of trash on Creek Road.
Good for you.
You're welcome. And there's another couple that also does it down there. I can't tell you how much trash. One day, where the end of the straightaway where you go into those curves, there's been a lot of accidents there. One day we picked up so much trash from the accident that we couldn't carry it, so we had to just pile it up there, and I had to go home and get my pickup and come back and load the pickup with it just to get it in the trash. But we moved down there, in 76. It was a quiet country road. We let our kids ride their bikes all over the place, including Creek Road. I'm a great-grandparent now, and I wouldn't let a kid ride a bike down on Creek Road now for love nor money. And I just would like to see, you guys put whatever pressure you can on the Ventura County. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, James. Okay, that's all. Those are all the cards. Do you have any other cards on this topic? All right, so we'll take it back to the council for, I guess, if the city manager has a report. Do we have anything further, or the council wish have any questions of staff?
Yeah, nothing to report further.
Bill?
Yeah, thank you for recognizing me. First of all, I think it's clear, at least I think it's very clear that we should support a very poignant letter, as was stated, to the county. I think that goes without saying, and for a lot of reasons. But I think we can do more, because it was mentioned about political will. And the city limits do Creek Road, Hermosa Road, and Country Club Road all have areas that are the boundaries with the county. And I think in each of those areas there is, and I've had some discussions with the city attorney on this. It'll be interesting to see how he characterizes it exactly. But let's just say that we may be well within reasonable political will, reasonable interpretation of things to assert jurisdiction over those parts of Hermosa, Country Club, and Creek that are boundaries with the county. For example, that might well give us the reasonable jurisdiction to put stop signs at Hermosa and Country Club, and I would argue the little sharp curve that everybody seems to ride up on the dirt for. Okay? What does that do besides just safety? It also changes the algorithm for Google.
Yes, that's
And any other MapQuest or whatever else algorithm is being used. It changes the algorithm without having to get the, while you're still fighting the battle to get 40 miles an hour all the way through. But it instantly does that. In terms of the truck traffic up Country Club, I did not realize the extent of that. And I think we have full jurisdiction on that in terms of talking to the Ojai Valley Inn and posting the no truck signs. And that's another thing we would have jurisdiction of, has been discussed in terms of where we share the boundary. But clearly, Ojai Valley Inn should be coming in and using 33 and stop lights to turn right and left. And this has come up before on Country Club and Hermosa. The idea that we have large articulated tractor trailers going on Creek Road and turning left on Hermosa and Country Club is just, I think, astonishing to me. So I would urge this council, beyond the letter, to be supportive of staff taking as an expansive a view as possible on jurisdiction for things like posting stop signs on the areas where we have boundaries with the county and Creek Road. There are other parts of the city where we assume jurisdiction of streets that are boundaries with county, and I think we ought to be supportive of staff taking that interpretation on Creek Road as well.
Okay. If you want, Mayor? Oh, okay.
I was just going to dovetail with that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Enough is enough, county. Get this figured out. I mean, Steve Bennett, come on. We don't understand this. I had a conversation with him at an APCD meeting last week, and he said, I always used to take it when I used to teach at Nordhoff. And I said, I don't take Creek Road, ever. I don't. And I want everybody out there to know, if you're listening to this, stop taking Creek Road. That will start to help fix the problem, number one.
Or go very slow when you drive.
Or go slow.
At least go slower, or just don't take it. So I want to read this from our staff report to make this very clear. I've lived in this valley a very long time. Almost everyone I know has done this test. And my opinion is it's just not faster to take Creek Road. Forget the stop signs for now. I think that's important, but right now I don't think it's faster. If you're going to the main part of town, it's less than a minute benefit, and that's only if you use the algorithms based on driving exactly the speed limit through the entire part. My problem is, and my car doesn't go over the speed limit on Creek Road because I'm too scared to do it. So I got to go under the speed limit, and I think that's why it actually takes me longer on average. If you're going to the east side of town, it's at best 2 minutes faster. Now, if you add these minutes up in your life, they don't mean anything. Stop trying to get people injured by taking Creek Road. If the message isn't clear, I want to make it really clear. Stop. Now, I am hoping that as part of this process, and frankly, Tina, you've done so much, but I really hope there is a Take the 33 campaign that gets started at some point. I think we need a number of bumper stickers on cars in this valley that remind everybody, because if they're not going to put the signs where we want, we're going to stick them on the back of our car. And we're going to make everybody realize that taking 33 is safer, it's faster, and it's smarter. And we need to get aggressively with this, because I didn't think this was going to be that difficult. It was hard as heck just to get some of our prior staff members to get the letter out I wanted to Google and Waze, and I was upset about that last time. And I really want to thank James, because he made sure when I brought it up to him when he took over as city manager that happened. We didn't get a great answer, but at least we are trying. I am so for this. I know multiple people who have been hurt on Creek Road who live in town, have driven it a million times because it's dangerous. I don't care if we put 7 stop signs in the little quarter mile we have access to make the algorithm say it's longer, because if we have to do that, you could stop, and stop as long as people aren't getting hurt. I don't care. I don't care if we put a toll booth. on the end of it. If we got to charge people to raise money to get rid of this problem, let's do it. Let's do everything we can until we are upsetting somebody enough that they're going to find a better solution, because this is too much. If we have to raise the money to bank all the turns with a toll, then at least people are being safe. The statistics, it doesn't matter which statistics we're looking at. Clearly, Creek Road is dangerous. I don't drive it, not because it's not faster. Honestly, I'm scared. I don't want to. I know too many people have been hurt, and it's not their fault. They're smart people who are driving well, and they are getting injured on Creek Road. And this is so difficult because I don't understand why the county has this block, but I'm going to say this. It feels to me that they think angry Ojai, who didn't like that the Bentley oil was allowed to do their flaring, and we aggressively pursued that this is like some backhanded way to get back at them for what that problem is. And I appreciate the commentary that that is a problem on this road at all, but I want to make this clear. This is not that issue. This is totally different. I don't care what goes on with Bentley Oil. I don't care if they do everything they need to do. This is about protecting the people that live here and come here and live in the valley to the best we possibly can. So I not only agree with Mr. Wyrick and everything else that we've heard here today, but I think it's time for us to work as a community to get this done. I think everybody should be on board. If anybody out there has a family member who comes visiting or somebody else they know who gets hurt at this, we're all complicit in not doing everything we can now. And if we can get those stickers out, it's going to be on my car first. I mean, I really don't think we need people taking Creek Road unless they live there, frankly. And the least we can do is with the inn. The least we can do is a stop sign. These are the least things we should have been able to do already when this issue first came up. And if we have 20 years more of this problem, it's going to be somebody one of you know personally who's going to be injured next, or somebody you know is going to die. And Creek Road should not be a death trap. The 126 had hundreds of millions of dollars invested in it when they realized that statistically it was a significant problem in the state of California. This is clearly a significant problem. Where's any money going at this at all? And a sign, a stop sign, these are so easy. Whatever I can do to help, whatever this council can do to help, I'm going to keep lobbying our supervisors and see what we can get done and talking to them. But I want to make it clear, this is not about us worrying about oil and gas. I'm appreciative of that. This is about the health and safety of our citizens, and this is becoming a clear and present danger. And the number one responsibility we have as a government body is the health and safety and to prevent clear and present dangers from affecting our citizens and the citizens around us. So we will, as far as I'm concerned, do everything we can. And I hope that our efforts can make something finally happen, because another 10 years from now, I don't want anybody coming in here and showing us stats of this going up, where it's not going to work anymore.
Okay.
Nobody else is getting hurt.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, but I didn't get to make my comments. Okay.
All
right.
I think we persuaded the jury. I think what we need to do now is we're deliberating amongst ourselves, and you'll have a chance.
Okay.
Let's get a motion of what is this idea of saying to direct staff to liberally or to broadly interpret. I don't know. What does the city attorney say?
Yeah, I'm happy to add a comment or two on that. So the first point is that the default rule with respect to boundaries and jurisdictions is that the boundary goes to the center line of the relevant roads. In certain cases, the boundary line will be determined by the metes and bounds of the resolution adopted by the Board of Supervisors or by LAFCO that approved an annexation or an incorporation. But absent proof to the contrary, the default is to the middle of the center road, the center line of the road, and the city could even assert to the edge of the road, as has often been asserted in prior cases, and as the county has acquiesced in some past cases. When we started paving it, the county was happy to give us the road. Because it meant we were paying for it. So it is reasonable for the council to assert that the city's power extends to the full limit of the roads adjacent to the city. That would include Hermosa and Country Club along Creek. And then, of course, the 10-mile-an-hour curve is fully within the city's limits, the edge of that curve. So if the council so wished, it could direct that stop signs be placed at those three locations and then provide direction to staff to bring back further locations to be approved, perhaps on consent as needed.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. But
As a first step. The first step.
Yeah.
I need some clarity, though.
Yeah. Okay, Randy.
I need to understand what the word truck means.
So
It's a vague word. I have a truck. Does it mean my truck? Does it mean the gentleman's truck that he had to go down to bring it back to pick up trash?
Yeah, I think they usually measure them by axle, don't they, and wheelbase?
So it's 3 or more axles?
As I understood the motion, it would be to approve staff's recommendation and then to add 3 stop signs, nothing related to trucks. the city has an existing ordinance that prohibits trucks defined as 3 or more axles from traveling along the city's portion of Creek Road, and the county has a similar ordinance that has the same, and there the definition of truck is 3 axles. And that, I think we have copies of that ordinance to be passed around. At least the city's version of it that was adopted sometime in the 80s.
Sometime in the 80s, and I'm going to get to that motion next that we look at.
Okay, so
Maybe a text amendment to that.
That would have been
that
nice to have been in our packet.
Yeah. I mean, that would be an additional thing I'm going to suggest after we get through this motion.
That's fair.
Are we going to do one at a time or all?
Well, I mean, look, I think the motion should be bring us back some aggressive options of what we can do on this. If it's 3 stop signs or more, I'm willing to look at different options that the staff can come up with and pick and choose what we, until we have something that's going too far, then I think we haven't gone far enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
I support that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And let's just assume reasonable, aggressive jurisdiction.
And that could include looking at what we can do to expand with clarity on the definition, the truck ordinance that we have
Yes.
now.
Yes.
And I agree.
Well, like you said, we talked about it. We just have to be aware of what we're doing and the impacts on all of the community, not just on this group in the community. For instance, if we enact something that doesn't allow average business owners or owners of trucks and horse trailers to have access to these roads by not having a clear and defined definition, then we're impacting everyone in a very negative and adverse way, and that's unintended consequences. I just want to be clear on what we do, that what we do is right, and it's all encompassing to all of us.
So I just hope that we could get a sense that all of us, we want the letter written, and we want to take aggressive action on the road where we can assert jurisdiction.
And I want to make it clear, I absolutely agree with Mr. Haney in that we should be very cognizant of what trucks are appropriate, and especially on the truck issue. But to me, the more important issue is the average person who's driving down that road and finding a way so that it doesn't say to go down there on Google and Waze. Because I think that can help. But if we can slow it down so the algorithm is not controlling behavior anymore,
Right.
Then maybe the truck problem will help fix itself, at least on some level.
And a little city manager, Ojai Valley, and
Yeah.
So,
Yes,
Mayor, I
yes,
have,
let it to the end.
Mayor, can I make
Yeah.
2 more comments, please?
Before you do, Rand, let me make,
You're fine.
I'd like to make a comment too, and Susan's next, and then we'll come back to you. Susan.
Okay, well, it's very clear that Caltrans is operating on an outdated paradigm, and there are people at the state level trying to change that, so that this kind of work would be much easier, dealing with speed limits, stop signs. Their whole paradigm is outdated, especially in this era when we're in a climate emergency, and we want people to slow down, use less gas. I'm old enough to remember when Creek Road was a beautiful residential country road. And Laura Ward, isn't there an article in the magazine, the current issue of the magazine, about what Creek Road used to be like? Don't miss reading it, because that is the vision I have for Creek Road. I support what Councilmember Haney and Councilmember Ryan Blatz has said. As Tina knows, I support it 1,000%. I went with Tina about 2 years ago to Supervisor Bennett's office. We had our first meeting with Steve Offerman and Cindy Cantle. I didn't dream that it would take this long. Something so reasonable would take this long, but here we are. And it's thanks to your relentless work, your data gathering. You've done all the homework, and you should get a Citizen of the Year award as far as I'm concerned. So, an important, one other aspect. How can I say this? The commuters, our commuters who moved to Ojai because of the peace and beauty of the valley, they need to realize that there is a price to pay. And that price is that we do not have a 4-lane highway that allows you to speed out of the valley. If you do not love this valley enough to slow down a couple of minutes, then maybe you should be moving somewhere near where you have freeway access, because that is the price that you pay for living in a valley with a narrow 2-lane road. Without that narrow 2-lane road, this valley would not exist. One of the wisest decisions the city council ever made was not putting a 4-lane highway through the town. Then you could all be speeding, and there are plenty of towns that have that. But if you're a commuter, and as many people are, as I myself was for 10 years, I commuted to Westlake many times a week, and actually all over Ventura and Santa Barbara County, the price you pay is you drive a little slower. And that's a small price to pay for living in our beautiful valley.
Okay, we are.
I think staff has direction.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that they do quite yet. As a former staff person, I recognize the perilous journey that we're sending them on.
How about we put the slide up and turn it-
Sousa, please. We're supposedly deliberating amongst ourselves, and we're orating, and I think everybody in this room just about agrees on what the problem is. They don't necessarily agree on the solution, and at least it's not coming fast enough. But we've talked about two different things here. Tina's done a really good job, I think, over the years of describing the problem to people and taking it to the edge, but being very respectful of the political process and how people react. We're talking about a jurisdiction that is not ours, and so when we go about this, at the request of Tina and it was Mona, we met and we talked about these stop signs that aren't in the city, and I agreed to talk with Steve Bennett, which I did, and Supervisor Bennett said that stop signs were still on the table. That had not been rejected. They were still working on those things, but he is, as Tina pointed out, he is one vote and not necessarily, he's certainly not in the power position any longer. Maybe after the next election, he won't be there anymore, but the tone of the Board of Supervisors has changed, and it is much more oriented towards looking towards Los Angeles, Thousand Oaks, Simi, and in the broad county, sales tax supports the roads, and because of the sales tax and the state laws, there are a lot of things that they try to regulate throughout the county of Ventura. It's not just us. So I think we should try to divide this up and not be quite as, if we're asking somebody for help, making them mad at us and asking the whole board, we're going to get no place on that. I think this idea of the 40-mile-an-hour thing makes perfect sense. If anyone drives that, it's almost like you get whiplash between the speed limit and the warning. And the speed limit and the warning, it says go 45. Oh, no, you're supposed to be going 35. Oh, no, you're supposed to be going 25. Well, that should tell the county something, and I think we can talk, with a little pressure, maybe we talk some reason, it's political will. The engineers will constantly come back with the warrant system and say, you haven't killed enough people, or whatever their data is that they use, enough injuries. But if we're going to take this broad interpretation and intrude onto the Creek Road that is maintained and operated by the county, and then assert ourselves and block the road, which I think is one strategy, then to ask them to cooperate with us on the balance of the road, I think strategically we need to think just a little bit about which way we want to go. If we control those things that we think we control from what the city attorney says, maybe we start trying to affect the algorithms by what our jurisdiction is doing, talking to the end, putting in the stop signs if we can do that. That will help. And then maybe respectfully see if we can get 40 miles an hour on the entire road. I think that is a dilemma for this, what did you call the thing that divide on the delineators on the lane, because the problem for people who are impatient, I've had the blue Corvette. I don't know if that's still in the valley, but it about took me out, and I don't know what is my primal brain wanted to beat him around the curve, and I thought I'm going to kill me and everybody else in the area because he was passing me at the entrance to Persimmon Hill. I mean, I can't imagine anybody, and he did it, but, you know, if I had decided to say, oh, yeah, we'd have probably both been dead. And it didn't save any time. You're absolutely right. So when we give our instruction, whatever this motion is to the staff, I would encourage us to try not to get into the confrontation of this is our jurisdiction and we're going to put up a toll road. I know you were just sort of euphemistic or maybe metaphorically.
But I think
suggesting
artfully
it.
asserting jurisdiction, they might find it somewhat of relief.
Yes, then it'll be our
Well,
fault.
it may be. Maybe.
I think aggressive, artful.
Yeah, well, maybe what we should try before we, send the staff off on a very broad thing is maybe the city manager, and if you'll delegate me, I hate to volunteer for this duty, but to go down and make one more effort with Supervisor Bennett's office, and I'm sure somebody on his staff probably is watching the tape. If they won't, I'll call them up and tell them to be sure to watch Ryan's presentation and Sousa's. But I think if we go down and talk to them and see what it is we can do, because if we're going to start to lock in on something where over jurisdictional boundaries, we're going to get nothing out of them, and we may be sued over what rights we have to do what we want to do, and that's not going to help the. I live down there, by the way. I also pick the trash up, so I appreciated what you were doing. And it is hazardous now. I mean, I don't walk that way. I tell my grandchildren don't drive that way. And fortunately, we haven't had the big one, but it's out there. Anyway, I'm not sure where we go with that. But if the council would do this, and we'll bring it back in 2 weeks and see what if anything, if it's sort of hopeless, then maybe we do what we can do in our jurisdiction. But let's see if we can do it cooperatively with the county, if there's any room to cooperate anymore. Tina's done her best. I think it's.
So, Mayor?
Yeah. Okay, Randy, I promise.
I just wanted to touch on that political side of it. Mr. Bennett's seat is coming up for replacement, and I think it would behoove all of you in the county that the first person that raises their hand that says they're going to run, that you go ahead and take a meeting with them. That'd be the first thing I would say, and start the pressure early on for that seat. The other thing, and we talked about it, I grew up going to Kern River. And the lower Kern has probably 26 to 30 deaths a year on that stretch of river and road.
Yeah, probably at least.
And I remember my parents saying, when we'd pull over to look at how fast that river was going, well, don't go near the water. And there was no reason for them to warn me, because there were signs like every 100 feet that said 26 people dead, 28 people died this year. They made it real clear not to go near the water. I've said the same thing. Someone needs to put a sign on their private property stating the number of accidents and make it a big sign. Almost the type of signs that the mayor ran with his first year.
Yes. They were
half a sheet of plywood
and they were very tasteful.
on private property stating the facts. And I think that that's something that needs to be done. And then the third thing is this thing about Creek Road in general. Something, when I'm coming in from Ventura, I take Creek Road home because it reminds me of my past. It slows me down. It allows me to gather my thoughts. It allows me to appreciate my surroundings. I would never tell anyone not to take Creek Road. What I would tell anyone that does is be mindful that people and children and horses and animals live on that road. That's what I would say to that. But we've got to accept all that they're giving us right now, all that they're giving you. And I believe we can ask for more, but they're bending right now. And I think you just need to keep the pressure on.
Yeah,
Keep the pressure on.
John,
Bill.
Final comment, I'm as careful with money as anybody when it comes to the taxpayer dollars, but with responsibility, you get privileges with responsibility. And we're looking at some ways of enhancing maybe in the future our infrastructure revenue in this community for dealing with things like the impacts of tourism. And if one of those things is to say, all right, county, we're going to take responsibility for those parts of Creek Road, and we're going to be doing the full jurisdiction, and we'll pave it. That might be what we just have to bite the bullet and do. And that's what we've done with other streets that abut the county. where we paved the whole street, even though we could say, county, you have to pay half. Well, we haven't. We've done the whole thing. And then we have full jurisdiction. It costs money, but at the same time, it's the kind of thing that maybe we need to look at, especially as we're looking at some of the rationales for enhancing our revenue stream to the city.
Okay, so can we accept that as a substitute motion, as to continue the matter for 2 weeks, and James and I'll go down and talk with Mr. Bennett's office. I know they're really trying, but I think Tina put her, accurately. You said it's a political will, and it's a political will. I think if Mr. Bennett could do it, he'd do it on his own, for the valley. He's always been good about that, but when they spread this county-wide, everybody say, why would we do that? And those people, the spoiled brats from the Ojai Valley, always complaining and wanting special treatment. And we say, yeah, but we pay a little more attention to our neighbors, and there's a reason why people like coming to the Ojai Valley, and it's not to be on a unsafe raceway. So
We need to assert our political will.
So is there any objection to the continuance? Okay, we'll do that and see what we can find out, because the county has actually done more than I thought they would do, but as you say, it has not been as effective as it might be. We got lots of big arrows saying curve, 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 but the whole thing's a curve. It's almost like we're relieved when we don't see the arrow that, now things are going to straighten out. No, they're not. It's just they ran out of curve signs.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, at this point, we're going to wait until you meet with the county again to do anything? Is that?
Well, no, if there are things that we can do here, but I was hearing this sort of, let's challenge the county and take their territory by broader interpretation and take on and then ask them for a favor, and
But there's one stop sign we know we can do, fully. Right?
Yeah, if it's within our jurisdiction, that's fine.
Do you want to cover that one?
Yeah, the one issue is, we mentioned in the report that because it's not required, or it's not required by engineering standards, we would need council direction to place a
Right.
stop sign.
So that's why I want to have
if you
council
want to make
direction.
that motion.
So we're talking about the little sharp area?
The 10-mile curve, I believe, is
Yeah,
completely
so
within.
I'm going to make a motion that we proceed with council direction to install a stop sign on that curve.
But what about the rest of the requests?
That gets into issues that the mayor has raised.
Okay.
That's fully within our jurisdiction. That might be enough to change the algorithms by itself.
The other two pieces that you might consider that are fully within your power are to place the no through street sign and the radar feedback sign, as
Right.
recommended by staff.
My motion
On the city-owned portion of the road.
include those.
I'm not opposed to the stop.
That's council direction.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the stop sign. I just would like to know where the stop sign's going.
Yeah.
Is it at the northern end? Is it at the southern end? Is it in the middle?
right at the-
Where is it?
In
Where's the
attach-
stop sign?
on-
Someone
on
help
attachment-
me see the stop sign.
On attachment A in your packet, there is a note with an arrow pointing out at the city limit at the 10-mile curve.
Well, yeah, but
It's better on the next one.
Attachment A?
Or actually, on attachment B, attachment B, it is clearer and zoomed in.
So the 10 mile an hour is completely within our city limits, that curve.
I think you'd want to make it stop.
And as Randy says, where exactly does the sign go?
3-6.
Well, I get that, and I see the boundary. Again, are we putting it on the southwest side?
Yeah.
Is that as you enter Ojai, as you enter the curve?
I would think.
Is
we'd
it
go-
on Camp Comfort side, or is it on the Ojai side?
Or is it
That's what I'm
both
trying to say.
directions?
I would think it'd be all
I was thinking it'd be
directions.
both
Both
directions,
directions.
but that's up to you.
I would suggest this, since we don't have a schematic of what that is, which is around this corner, that corner, because it is an L curve. Either you're putting it right after a curve or you're putting it right before a curve. One direction has to be after the curve, right? That may not work. I think we should just, in 2 weeks, it's not a lot of time, but I'm all in favor of it, but I'd like to
Okay.
see at least a mock-up of what exactly we're looking
Okay.
at before we
Okay.
approve it. I don't want to make it more dangerous.
Okay.
I want to make it more dangerous.
Yeah.
I just want to make it slower.
I have another question, Mayor. What about the sign that Tina proposed, directing people to the Ojai Business District? Can we do that? Do we need permission? No?
Yeah, that's outside of city limits, so
It's
it would be a
outside.
request to Caltrans,
Yeah.
but I think it's part of this discussion with the
Part of the
other
letter.
agencies.
It's part of the letter. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so is there anything in the report that we want to say, go ahead and do it now? Or do we want to bring the whole thing back in 2 weeks?
One thing that we actually think could be has multiple benefits is the speed radar feedback sign that we are proposing to put down at the Montgomery near the Montgomery intersection, just because we do get a lot of complaints of people speeding in that area. Period.
Yeah.
What about the letter to the Ojai Valley Inn? We can do that right away?
I think that may be best accomplished with a series of phone calls to
Okay,
the relevant staff
okay.
there before a letter.
Okay.
As we'll take a look at how that interacts with their permits. I think that can be solved at a less restrictive level.
We can reach out to
Is
them.
is that going to require an ordinance of some sort if we want to move forward with it? If it's not just a cooperative agreement with the Ojai Valley Inn, will it require an ordinance or anything like that?
I don't think it'll require an ordinance. I think it can be done through them agreeing to voluntarily change their haul route.
Yeah.
If the voluntary solution is ineffective, we'll look at some other options.
Okay, thanks.
So what's included in the motion? The relocation of the
radar
feed-
driver's feedback sign, and then the continuance for 2 weeks to allow for us to meet with the county.
Okay, good with that, Bill?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second to
Yeah.
that?
Come back in
Second.
2 weeks.
Moved and seconded.
I think the idea-
I guess there's no real cost involved other than what's in the budget, so if there's no objection, so ordered. Okay, thanks, Tina, and everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll keep at it.
We'll get their attention. We'll make sure. We're going to keep moving forward.
We can change that algorithm, that'll help.
Yeah. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, everyone.
Bill, do you write algorithms for anything? Do you write algorithms for anything?
We'll go to a war surplus store and look for tank traps.
There's Ramona.
Yeah. Yeah, it may or may not do any good, but I think that before we end up in a
understand.
civil war, I think we should
but
at
I
least
think-
give them a shot.
Not that we're still talking about this, but I feel like we tried our hardest already, and this was the best response we were going to get.
Yeah.
I don't think this is us saying, hey, we didn't start cooperatively. It just feels like we get funky numbers, weird 40-mile-an-hour things that aren't exactly where they're supposed to be, and Tina's trying to say, hey, there's just some weirdness that's not logical, and that to me sounds like we need to push a little bit harder.
Okay, yeah,
Anyway.
and you may be absolutely right. We'll, if we don't get any feedback other than, hey, it's the way it is, then we do whatever we can do within our jurisdiction and continue the campaign. Okay, great, thank you. So we now want to go back, what, to number 2? Number 2.
Let's go. Let's just continue that item. Let's just continue the whole thing.
It's up to you guys. I think we
guys
do
worried
have a
about
planner
fire
here,
now?
though. Are you here for fences and hedges?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, so we at least want to take public comment on.
No, I want to.
No, we need to make progress here.
I want to follow up on that 4 foot.
Okay, is there staff introduction that you want to
Yeah,
make?
sorry, I missed my cue there. Just a reminder of where we're at with this. On July 9th, the City Council received 6 recommendations, which are included in the packet as Attachment B, from the Planning Commission related to fences, walls, hedges, and screening. The City Council, at that meeting on July 9th, discussed those 6 recommendations, discussed possible alternatives, and ultimately directed that staff return to a council meeting in September to proceed with implementing 3 of the recommendations. The 3 options that were chosen were the eliminating the 5-foot setback requirement for fences and walls that are 3 feet or less in height, which would allow them to be in the front yard property line abutting the right-of-way or the sidewalk. Number 2 was establish a minimal or no-fee permit process that would allow the city to review and approve fences and walls in the front yard setback area. And number 3 was to address safety-related issues related to the intersection visibility areas. So those 3 items have now, staff has prepared an ordinance that implements those 3 items. The ordinance, also one other related issue is that staff, I wanted to make clear, because it was not directed by council, but we've included it for discussion, is we've included a clarification regarding chain link fencing. The code prior had noted that chain link is discouraged within the city. We've had that wording challenged in recent projects, so we've recommended that council discuss whether to actually prohibit it unless approved by the director rather than simply discourage it. So those are the key items, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Just to clarify, because I agree with what's within the draft ordinance, but I noticed the staff report was a little inconsistent. And if you on 2-12 attachment A, page 6 of 8, part K, that was added, fence and wall permit for required for front and side yard fences. I'm fully in agreement. I think the no-fee permit is great, but I think the staff report says just front yard. It's front yard and side.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
It was a typo in the staff report. It should be the front and side
Okay,
yard.
all right.
With the idea being, the reason we are recommending that, we've talked to some other cities, Carpinteria's fencing process is included, and they have a similar process, is the applicant gets peace of mind that they have an approved plan
Right.
written down from the city.
Right.
It is obviously anytime you have to come in, it's a little more hassle, a little more bureaucracy is the concern. But there's been several projects recently where somebody said that they came to the city and verbally got an approval, and then they were not,
Which is never good.
right. They were not clear or sure if they could rely on that. So this is intended to address
But
that
it would
issue.
also be a good signal to the fence companies. If you're putting a fence in Ojai, come to City Hall. It's not going to cost anything, but get it cleared.
What I do want to say, and the council has the discretion to waive or modify the fee. We set it at, or we recommended in the ordinance at setting it at just the same fee that is charged for any other zone clearance, which is $112, I believe.
But we could go lower.
But it can go lower.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that.
Okay. I have a comment.
Okay.
Yeah. I would like council to bring their attention to the bottom of page 1, where it says to eliminate the 5-foot setback requirement for fences and walls that are 3 feet or less in height. And I've made this request before. I made it at the Planning Commission, and I consider it at least 4 feet or less, because many people do not have a backyard. They have dogs. That's a health and safety issues. Even 4 feet, a big dog could jump, but any height that you can add will make it easier for people to
A gentle
contain
point
their-
of order.
Uh-huh.
I think we're deliberating now, and we should see if there's cards first.
Is the public hearing going to be, yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, I mean, we were just doing
That's
staff
okay.
questions.
Hold that thought. Okay, so
I actually agree with you, but I just wanted to.
Okay, good.
James, you have anything further to add before we go to the open? I guess we open the public hearing.
nothing else.
I've got a card after we get the, okay, we're good? Okay, the public hearing is open, and I have one card, Bobby Corbin. Commissioner Corbin.
I'm Bobby Corbin. I live at 706 Daly Road. I am a member of the Planning Commission. I'm here as a citizen with a design background and a citizen who has sat through many planning meetings about this issue. I just want to say that although this is not a life or death issue, that fences, walls, hedges, screens do affect our life. They do affect the visual impact of our city. And as somebody who loves to walk through town and see what people have done to their front yards, I know that many of the things that I really love technically don't meet code. And so I want to say that I would like you to tread slowly and lightly. I think this is a really complicated issue, and that you can never regulate every single part of it because it is too complicated. And so in that vein, I have a couple of things that I would like to say. One is that I agree that I would like to see the height in the front be at least 4 feet. If you want to do 4 feet with the 5-foot setback, that's fine, but you should have the option to be able to do that. And there are a lot of other issues that come up in this, which you obviously didn't deal with all of them, that there were 3. So the first one is the 5-foot setback and whether we need it. If you want to get rid of it, that's fine. If you want to keep it, it's fine. One of the things that we talked about at planning was to have 3 feet at the property line, and if you set it back, you should be able to have at least 4 feet if you've set it back 5 feet. You also consider that many of the houses are above grade, at least a step or 2, and so 3 feet by the time you get up to the front stoop or the front porch, and there aren't that many in town, you're much higher than that. And I'm almost out of time. As far as the permit goes, I'd like to see that very minimally, but what Santa Barbara does, and there's discretion in there, so there's the ability to do screening on a small portion in front of your house or parallel to your driveway so that you don't have to see your car when you're sitting out in the front. And those things should be something that there's an option for. Maybe it's a permit that goes to the staff person to look at to see if they meet the feeling. I understand you don't want a wall in front of somebody's house, but there's something in between those two. And, right now, the front yard setback is where your house is. It's not the front setback, and that's an issue. So if you need to put something up so that your trash can isn't seen, you can't even do that because the trash can's higher than 3 feet. So I think there's just a lot of issues that I'd really like you to kind of go slowly, maybe, meet with the Planning Commission, have the staff take a look at it. There are just a lot of things that need to be considered in making these ordinances and in reviewing the ordinances that I'd like to really take consideration on.
Okay. Thank you, Bobby.
Can I ask a question of Bobby? Bobby, are you saying that you're not in agreement with the recommendations that are presently before us?
I think they're too simplistic.
They're what?
They're too simplistic. The first one, getting rid of the 5-foot setback with a 3-foot or less. I mean, if you give the option to do a 4-foot fence at 5 feet back, then that's okay. But if there's no option to make that fence higher, then I'm not in agreement with it. My reading about the permit was that it was going to be more complicated than a no-fee permit or a really simple over-the-counter thing. And if somebody's just doing a fence and all the requirements are met, I think it should be as simple as possible. I do think that there should be an option to have some kind of discretionary permit that's looked at by the staff member, and if you wanted to do something that was a little bit different. You guys haven't really considered our recommendation that the front yard setback be set where it is as opposed to where the house is in case the house is way far back on a lot. But I understand that you don't want a wall across the whole front of the house, and I think you can write that very clearly without having to say, okay, if your house is 75 feet back from the street, you can't put anything higher than 3 feet for 75 feet back. I don't think that makes sense. So I think you have to be very clear about what you are trying to accomplish with your regulations and your ordinances, and I think they need more meat and more substance. But I don't think you can regulate absolutely everything, which is why I think that having some kind of a permit, Santa Barbara has some kind of a board that looks at it because they have kind of a design review committee or that can take care of that. But we theoretically would have a staff person who should have some credentials in that and be able to take a look and see if it's in keeping with what we're talking about. So I'm saying that I just think that I'd like you to take a little bit more in-depth look at things and not making these black and white statements. You can't have anything higher than 3 feet and back to your house. The point of that is that you don't want a wall all across the front of the house.
Yeah.
I think you should just say that.
Yeah.
And then it's clear that you can't do that. And then at least be a little bit more open-minded about what the possibilities are for the design of your property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that
Thanks,
clear?
thanks, Bobby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm in favor of it having at least 4 feet.
Thank you.
Okay,
And if you need to set it back 5 feet, that's fine.
okay. Good, okay. Christine, did you?
I just have a quick question, just so I can follow the conversation. Are you talking about new development or existing or both?
It's any new fence. So if you have a property and you want to put a fence in. these
So
rules.
existing property as well.
Mhm.
So then, may I make a comment? I can think of no reason for government to regulate private property unless it's a safety concern. If somebody wants a wall, they should be allowed to have a wall unless it's a safety concern. There's too much government regulation. Leave our bushes alone. There are animals and wildlife living in there. It's beautiful greenery. It cools the earth. It adds oxygen. It's what we want. Don't make us cut our hedges down. And this doesn't personally affect me. I live off the road. I can do whatever I want. But I ask you, don't do this to my neighbors, please.
Okay, well, so far, what we're talking about in that regard, I think, is public safety, which is what you say you agree with. Yeah, it's, the big example or two big examples I've seen in town, well, wait a minute, we did.
Are we bringing this back for discussion?
Yeah, I've got to haven't closed the public hearing yet. Is there anybody, I don't see any more hands. Okay, we'll close the public hearing then. I was going to say that there are a couple of situations. If you go down the one-way alley there behind the standard station, in Hattie's place there, you cannot see because of that hedge. It's a beautiful hedge, but it just totally, it's a blind edge, and it's not safe. There's another place that is not great, and that's where we have something like a 12, I didn't measure it, but it appeared to me, looking up at it, that it was 10 or 12 feet high, and what is it, podocarpus,
Right.
Over off a Grand, and that's just turned into, but, having people put up, hedges 12 feet high, no, of course, that one happens to be green and being fairly well cared for, but not all of them are, so, anyway, okay, let's, okay,
Wasn't
Bill.
I in the middle?
Go ahead.
Wasn't I in the middle of, I was starting?
What?
I was in the middle.
Well, you recognize.
So
he's
may
a-
I be recognized?
He's
Okay. Okay, I'll try to recapture what I'm saying. I agree with Bobby that we have to tread lightly. This is not, when I go to Miners Oaks.
We're
yeah.
deliberating.
Okay, now we're, okay.
It gets confusing.
Okay, so I brought up the issue of fence height to secure animals, and both the animals inside the fence and the people walking their dogs and animals yapping at them. And we have to consider the size of the yard, because some people like myself only have about an 8-foot front yard, and somebody did try to turn me in because I didn't honor the 3-foot setback. But anyway, so here we are. That's one reason
We know
deliberating. Yeah. And I also want to acknowledge that a lot of what we're seeing is driven, and I've said this before, but I want to emphasize it, it's driven by the speed and the volume of traffic. People want to put up more and are inclined to put up thicker hedges and want more walls to mitigate the noise. Okay, so we have to acknowledge that. Of course, as you know, my answer is more bicycles and pedestrians and reduce the noise, because then we can keep what we're aiming for, which is I think Bill characterized as a friendly front porch city without walls. That's our aim. Okay, that's all I want to say. So please, so
okay.
when we vote, we'll go to
So,
4 feet.
is there anything from this end of the? If not, I'll go back to Bill.
Go ahead, Bill.
Have you got something you'd like to say?
Well, I have a question. If under these schematics here, these all assume that the property next to the driveway is not the neighbor's property. How do you enforce these rules if it's the driveway's on the property line? Can't tell, are you going to force the neighbor to have to cut down their hedges or take down their fence for the line of sight on the neighbor's area? Because then they're in violation due to that restriction.
Generally, our requirement is that their driveways be set at least a minimum distance from the property edge to solve that problem, but obviously some exist, or some older developments were set with driveways immediately adjacent to property lines. If that's the case, then anything that exists, the city, would think, unless the council directed, wouldn't be enforcing it on current things, but it would be applied to something in the future, which would mean if you had a property owner who made modifications, it might be triggered. But it would depend on to what extent the council wished to direct enforcement up front of these new requirements versus enforcement over time as properties turned over.
Bill?
I'm going to show a couple slides, but Gail, if you could warm that up while I start talking. I promise quick. Number one, I think the intent of council was that minimal was less than 112. I'm going to suggest 25. I just think it should be very low. I have no problem with the 4 foot. And in fact, we paid $30,000 plus to a consulting firm that came up with that recommendation. And I'm going to go through that real quickly here since it's up. It is a matter of character. This is from the Sargenttown Planning Group. And they very clearly, right at the beginning there, elements of neighborhood character includes front yards, fences, walls, porches, storefronts, shop fronts, forecourts, landscape, hardscape. This is a character issue, and the issue is how to, in my mind, handle this in a fair way, but acknowledging that it is a character matter. So if we could go to number 6. No, we're on 6 now. I'm sorry. Yeah, go the next one here is number 54. He says walls should screen parking lots and define front yards. There's more to that. It also says should be less than 4 feet high. Is also on that slide. It's not showing, and that's why I would agree that we had a professional hired to give us recommendations, and they used 4 foot throughout. And so I like the idea. Not sure why it's. It
might be one where
oh, there it is. Now it's on. It took a while to load. Okay, so I'm fine with the 4 foot, and frankly, that I've kind of I'm being reasonable, and I think.
Give me so much peace of mind.
And I like the idea of it being able to be the front one being able to be on the property line. That makes perfect sense to me. If we could go on to number 59, I promise you it's going to be quick.
Look how nice that looks.
Well, again, but it's, except for the, yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, the natural.
Bill's trying to be quick.
Okay. And so okay, back up one. No, back up right there. Okay, that's number 59. Again, they talk about the wall should be smooth. They should be less than 4 foot. We see this throughout in this professional recommendation that we had, but it points up the fact that the aesthetic of the city is served by having some sort of regulation in terms of our frontages and side yards that connect and establish the character. So if we could go just 2 more to 61. Well, this is a great one too, by the way. We could back up. This is also a good example of where this is an inset area, and they're praising us for having this kind of thing in our city because it's a public-private frontage integration. That's part of having this regulation is the private-public frontage integration. That's why we need to have these rules. So last one, Johnny, I promised you. One more. Okay, let's see, go again. Well, we're off anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is that that's anyway.
What I'm going to do.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that I think that we need to have some ministerial rules for permits. That I would suggest would be just this minimal $25 to address the issues raised by Bobby and Christine. We should maybe think about how we throw a discretionary element in this. Where people, let's say they want to have I don't know if a variance is the right word, but some kind of discretionary flexibility. Let's say they're way back, or they want to add a small element to their front yard. We'll say, okay, well, that doesn't fit within something we can just do over the counter. We're going to have to do a little more review of it. I think that would be a good way forward. Next, I want to say that it is corrosive of good governance to have something like this with enforcement suspended for 5 years. It's approaching how long we suspended enforcement of short-term rentals, and remember the problems we got into with that. So what's important, I think, tonight is that we make a decision and move forward with direction. And also, I think the last thing I want to say is absolutely the mistake that was made when we tried to enforce this ordinance in 13, Randy, was we just basically turned it over to staff, and staff went too hard, too fast, without a sense of sort of Ojai tact and soft feel.
Yeah.
And it wasn't within our community's character. And I think, let's say on the issue of hedges, we need to have safety first, and then a kind of a soft rollout on other aspects of it. But frankly, if you're trying to walk along a city right-of-way and you're dealing with a 10 or 12-foot vegetation halfway impinging on your sidewalk, that's a problem. I also want to raise the issue that because we have suspended enforcement, we have seen additional encroachments on the right-of-way in the arbolata, significant, including fences and hedges. And I've pointed out some of them in the past. And the problem is with that enforcement suspension, we kind of handcuff code enforcement for going in and saying, you know what? You're putting this improvement, you view this as an improvement that you're putting in, but you're doing it on the city right-of-way. And this is a problem. I mean, there are people in some areas of the arbolata that used to be walking between vegetation and the street on the other side of those rocks, and those pathways have now been blocked by private property owners planting on that city right-of-way. That's not right. So I would urge us to decide to do a few things like the 4-foot, the 25, and maybe think about coming up with a process of a soft rollout here, a strategy, and maybe dividing where you have the ministerial permit. That's just, if you meet these guidelines, here's your permit. If you want some exception or flexibility, you're going to have to go to another level of review. I think that might be an intelligent path forward, but I think we need to do something as part of the character of this community.
Mayor? What you describe in the arbolata is a safety issue.
Yes.
It's not just an aesthetic
Absolutely.
issue. So it's something that we have to face.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, anyway, I don't know if, we have an ordinance in front of us that I think we already feel like maybe we want to modify a little bit in terms of.
Well, I think this side of the council would like
Yeah,
to speak.
but I just.
I know we're hidden by all types
So
of
I just,
stuff, so.
yeah, I was seeing silence down there. I
Yeah,
wanted-
okay, you're done now.
Yeah, I'm done.
Randy.
Oh, Ryan was.
Go ahead.
Oh, Ryan.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I just, I think, honestly, I think you made the point for us, for me, is that the arbolata is different than the rest of town, and this part of town is different than this, and these blanket rules that you want to apply don't work here. The Persimmon Hill is not the arbolata, is not the center of town. The age of these buildings, I'm looking at and I'm looking at these schematics in my neighborhood and thinking about how the impact is going to be on everyone. And the reality is, it means they have to rip out, that they're cutting down living hedges, that they're ripping out walls and stuff for a safety issue that you called character. So I'm not really sure whether it's safety or character or it's both, because I think both are important.
Both.
But there's no mention of any harm that's ever been caused. There's no safety concern that's ever been raised other than, there's no data, there's no accidents, there's no injuries, there's no stuff. I understand that people in the arbolata have to walk on the street, so I believe that may be a problem, but there's nobody saying, there's no person from the public saying this is a problem. There's no impact. There's nobody, I mean, who's here? I mean, who's here saying?
In Arbolata for years, and it is a huge problem. You can't let your kids walk.
Yeah. Come on down, so everybody can see you at home.
It's Laura Ward here. I lived there for years in the Arbolata. You cannot walk. It is not safe. You can't. I lived on Rancho Drive. That's where I raised my kids, and they couldn't ride their bike to school. You can't let people. People have to jump out of the way of cars that are coming around the corner, and if they do, they're going to hit their head on a rock because there's boulders where the walkway is. And if you think we're not saying anything, I'm going to send you guys great cartoon that ran in the Ojai Valley News that we had made about the street mining that goes on in the Arbolata at night when the people roll the boulders out. Yeah. So, yeah.
And I want to make this clear. You did not come up and speak. I don't have a letter from you. I don't have a letter from anybody else. I don't have any communications from anyone. There's nothing in the staff report that I can look at. And even right now, you're addressing this, which I think is important, but even that was after the time where we would have normally had public
No. I wanted to talk about something else, so I'm still here waiting.
Okay. So I'm just saying, as far as my experience has been as a representative, there's not that out there. Now, that being said, doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but the concerns in the Arbolata may not be identical for that to the rest of the community. And I just think we have 3 simple schematics. I think there's simplicity issues a problem.
Then of you?
I mean, I just don't know how this is going to really impact our community.
Can I ask a question, just to clarify where you're coming from? Is that right? We have a suspended enforcement of an existing ordinance. Would you at least agree that we need to change the ordinance or enforce it?
Well, I don't know I honestly don't know what the impact has been of us failing to enforce it other than this anecdotal stuff, because I just don't know. I mean, if I have not personally, no, my personal experience in this community has not been that there is a massive problem with walls. I haven't noticed that. In the Arbolata, I have not driven through there and gone, wow, what changed about Ojai that we allowed these horrible things to happen?
Well, that's more, but that the issue is having something on the books that you're not enforcing for years and years.
Right.
I mean, the question is, because
I didn't make that decision. I just got here.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that's the most untenable thing in my opinion. And to me, I get calls all the time from people. Why isn't the city doing something about ABC that they find obnoxious or dangerous or one thing or another? I get calls from people all the time saying I have to pull out in the road to make a turn.
Well,
because I can't see oncoming traffic. I get that all the time, but maybe I just attract that kind of thing. More
maybe
than
you're
you
better
do.
to talk to about that than
Mayor, may I add something to the?
May I respond?
So that's my main point, Ryan.
Okay. Brian,
And by all means, I don't think we ought to have rules on the books we don't enforce, but I wasn't here to make the decision not to enforce this. But I look at this as not a new enforcement scheme, as a modification, and I'm trying to understand the modification of it. As far as why the council suspended enforcement of all these rules in the past, I'm not against enforcing them now, but that's not the question that's in front of me tonight. This is a modification of the ordinance that was suspended a long time ago, and I'm looking at these simple schematics, and it resonated with me that there's too much simplicity. That I think that term made some sense to me. Not that it's not necessary or that there's a right way to do, because I completely agree. There are
two classes of permits,
communities I have been to where there is an overabundance of strong walled-off areas that lessen the community atmosphere. There's no question, I completely agree with that. But how we modify that without causing the unintended consequences in our community, because I'm not sure how this is exactly going to be enforced. I know what happened last time. There was a complete freak out of everyone. Now, it was heavy, but I was in the neighborhood where people literally chopped down living hedges and left them dead on the ground.
My point, exactly.
Right? And because that's what they were told to do, though.
My point, exactly.
And I'm still not sure this wouldn't make that happen again. I mean, I guess my answer is I don't know. I'm not totally convinced this wouldn't, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, Susan.
I think Randy wants to turn.
Oh,
Randy, do you want to speak?
I'm into the, we've had this argument, I don't know how many times, not even a discussion anymore. It's an argument.
Okay.
So what I find interesting is I hear on one side of our mouths that we want to be bike-friendly and pedestrian-friendly, and we want people to walk, and we want to engage. And then the other side of it is, no, we want 15-foot walls or hedges or anything that we possibly can. So I'm lost on that argument. I'm lost on it. I don't get it. So I think there's some easier things to do. I think that we can go to that 4 foot. I'd prefer 42 inches, but I'll take 4 feet. I don't care. And that's next to curbs and sidewalks or things of that nature. There's no wall that you can build in Ojai that's taller than 6 feet unless you get a variance to go to 7. I don't think we should have any wall in the city of Ojai, whether it's brick, block, wood, green, greater than 7 feet. And I would say you start at 6 and you have the applicant come in and ask for a variance to take it to 7. And I think that's where you start there. And at least you have consistency. The other thing I think we can do, and I think Ryan was talking about that, or someone, was how we could create part of the system that says, I can bring my plot plan in, and I can clearly demonstrate to you the reason that I need this 6-foot hedge here. And on a one-by-one basis, let that individual come in and plead their case, and let the director, following the guidelines that we're setting forth tonight, rule on that. That's the easiest way to get around this.
We have director's exemptions already.
And then the other part of it is, again, when we go about this, go about it as Ohioans. Talk to your neighbor. You know that? We're better off talking to each other than we are having a code enforcement officer drive by and say, you're in violation. You know, so we need to do that. So that's going to enhance our community. Those are the 3 things that I see us looking at. And I don't, safety will be applicable to all of that. But I think as neighbors to neighbors and community, trying to do this all together, I think that's where we need to start. If you need a wall, if you need a hedge, if you need something greater than 6 feet, apply for it. And
discretionary, right.
And if we wanted to clarify, and I think this was one of the things that we discussed, I believe, 2 councils ago, was the swimming pool in the front yard and the fact that they needed a 60-inch wall to meet code, and that we didn't want to allow them to put the wall where they wanted to do it. So ultimately, again, you have the opportunity where someone could come in, apply, do the proper permitting, and have the CDD director actually make the right decisions. And I think that's what's before us tonight, is something that's pretty simple, something that we can get around, and that if someone has a need to have something different, let them come in and
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. You'd have a ministerial class.
Yeah.
And then you'd have a discretionary class.
Right.
And maybe ask the staff to come back with something that would have the basic rules and then some flexibility.
Right.
What's the enforcement plan for this? I mean, what is it? Is this moving forward? Is this moving back? Are we going to end up in the same situation where people are chopping them down because they don't want to deal with getting a tag from the city and a fine?
Well, that's what I was referring to. We don't do it the way we did it.
Well, I understand that. I mean,
Okay.
but still, what is the? I mean, besides it being different, what?
Well, what I would suggest is that we ask the staff to come back as time allows. I know you're short-staffed, and basically come. All right, here's like like a set of where we think these are clearly safety hazards. Does council agree? And that's what's a prior. We consider this an example of priority, and see if they get. We agree with that.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. As long as we have a mechanism to do it. I mean, I can, I was surveying some properties and looking around, and I mean, for example, there's a kind of like a 6-foot fence on the property line across from Arc, and there's so many different places where I don't think anybody would notice. I just don't think, as long as there's a way that we're not coming in heavy-handed, where we can look at it and say, hey, but the fairness issue is concerning to me too, because that creates.
Okay. We're gonna be here all night on this. We got 3 more items to talk about. We need a motion of some sort, or a motion to continue, but not. We can't workshop this tonight. I understand what people have concerns. If you've got a few things that you think we all agree on, we can have a motion to approve that much and narrow this down to what we don't agree on.
I'll make a quick motion to continue with council input for revisions to include 4-foot reduced cost and a 2-component, both ministerial and discretionary component to the permitting. and just see what staff comes up with, and we bring it on and discuss it again.
I'll second that.
Okay, to give that direction to staff and bring it back?
Yeah.
Is that, okay, does that address what you guys are?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay.
Mayor Bobby keeps raising her hand.
I know, but this,
Protocol.
We're done.
okay, yeah.
Planning Commission did make a difference,
Okay, but
If you're gonna speak, you need to come to the microphone, please.
Are you opening up to public?
No, we're opening it up to a commissioner.
I just wanted to say that the Planning Commission did differentiate between walls and hedges, and hedges were not allowed to get, if you were going to plant a hedge, you had to set it back 5 feet because they grow.
Right.
And if you do set it back 5 feet, it usually takes care of the visual problem, because it's then you can see around it. It's usually the parked car that's causing you distress, not the hedge.
Right. Okay.
And the hedges need more height
Okay.
to grow
Right,
properly.
we got,
So
okay, so, Bill, your motion, is that's clear to everybody? You'll work with the staff then to come back
And
with something?
anyone else.
Okay, if no, okay, so ordered. Let's move to, what is it, item number 4?
I think it's made a little progress.
Okay.
Consideration of possible transient occupancy tax increase. TOT. And we have, okay.
Can I give
Good
just
staff
a brief
report?
staff report, and I'll keep it very brief, but just so people watching or people at home realize, transient occupancy tax, or TOT, is also sometimes referred to as the tax on tourism. And we mentioned in the report that the city of Ojai has a 10% TOT tax. We compared that to other cities in San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Ventura counties. We are on the in the lowest end of that group, with some cities having a 12% tax, a 13% tax. And we also looked statewide and saw that the city of Ojai has an average rate of 10%, with the higher cities in the state having rates as high as 15.5% TOT. So with that, we, for those not familiar, we use TOT to do things like street paving and other projects by policy. So we are recommending that council direct staff to prepare a tax measure for the November election to increase the TOT.
Okay.
I just have a staff question.
It's a staff question. Bill?
Am I correct in assuming that this would be a majority vote approval as long as it was going to the general fund, but any restriction we put on it other than by post-approval policy would kick it to 2/3 approval?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Correct. And
Okay.
by policy, currently our TOT 20% goes to infrastructure improvements, CIP.
Right.
And so we could continue to do that without making that part of the
Or we
ballot.
could increase it for this portion.
Correct.
But just not put it in
By
the
policy.
approval, but it would
By
be by policy, and then that keeps it majority vote approval.
Correct.
Okay.
And the key about that is that that's a separate policy that is annually subject to review and approval
Right.
by the council. Because it's not a permanent bind on that tax revenue, it does not trigger the 2/3 vote.
I have a quick question. Does the transient occupancy tax only apply to those businesses in the city of Ojai?
Oh, yes.
Okay, because I know I just want to make sure, because the tourism improvement district included some outside the city, correct?
Right.
Right,
That-
But the
because
county
they-
adopted a
That's because the
wanted to
county
make
went
sure.
along with that.
That was
I
done
just-
as a joint exercise between
I
the
had
city
somebody
and
ask
county.
me that, and I thought that was the answer.
Yeah,
Just-
this would just be within the city of Ojai.
Okay.
So I just wanted to
Randy?
clarify, so what we're saying is that if we raise this 1% or 2%, we are gonna earmark that specifically for, a CIP, for instance, I see this. in
No,
two-
no.
well,
We'd have to do that by policy.
That's what I'm saying, that's what I wanted to clarify, because what I'm seeing is if you did go to 12%, with the 2% increase, you could almost double what we're doing in street paving.
I would advocate.
So I'd almost want to say, if you're going to do it, we tie it to something where the community sees where that money's going.
Right, but you run the risk, if you do that, it requires a 2/3 vote, and the odds of passing something to 2/3, even when everybody loves it, go way down,
So
Yeah.
I would
That's
advocate for that as policy. I would certainly advocate for that as policy.
And that can best be accomplished through council policy. Another approach that some communities use is a companion, non-binding advisory measure, providing the community's input on that policy. And there's a way to structure those two separate, but it can just be council policy too.
Okay.
Okay, and is this something that would be up to X percentage to then be determined by the council as to how much of the headroom we want to exercise?
Yes, that would we would recommend that the ballot language be worded to be increase the tax up to 12%. If the 2% was the selected option.
Okay.
Adding 2% to the current.
Okay, but we could even make it not be up to 14, but have the council set it anywhere from where it is to the 14 as needed, rather than have an election every time you.
Right.
The only thing I will say is that working on our cannabis tax ballot language, as soon as you had that in there, it does make the ballot language kind of complex.
Okay.
And it's kind of difficult it's
Okay,
not always
just-
simple for everybody to understand.
Just go straight forward, okay.
I have no
think
problem
that's
either way.
right.
I just want to say that it's one difficulty we've
Okay, any other questions for staff? I have one card. Yeah, I don't want to keep.
My question is, so you're going
Come on up,
to,
Laura.
you're going to write something that makes it clear to the voter that they're not paying for it.
Yeah.
The tourists are.
Yeah, yes. We plan to make sure when we do outreach that it's clear that this is the tax paid by hotel guests. It's not
Yeah.
typically paid by.
Yeah.
The language will come back for our approval, Susan.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. I have a, Laura.
Hi, Laura Ward back again. First, I want to say about Creek Road, we talked so much about it. We do have 2 stories in the Ojai Valley Guide magazine, the current fall issue, that are really compelling. One about ghosts, and one from David LaBelle, who lived in Ojai on Creek Road for many years and returns. So check those out. I'm in favor of adding a restricted 3% to our transient occupancy tax. Our city is falling behind even while it dreams of becoming a city that leads the way. Our roads take 29 years to pave while they wear out in 15. We want to, and now must, become responsible for generating the city's municipal power and the downtown lighting district through solar power. Our town lacks sidewalks. We experience congestion and parking issues, not because we have too many people, but because we have poor planning and lack of resources. There are 7,500 residents and about 850,000 visitors a year. It is time for the visitors to pay their fair share of roads, parking, sidewalks, and conversion to sustainable city power. A 3% increase would contribute an additional $1 million annually, more if a hotel goes in at Chaparral. I feel the residents will be inclined to give us the 2/3 vote required if the TOT is restricted to roads and sidewalk improvements, land acquisition and the implementation of a solar farm with parking beneath it, and $75,000 per year for code enforcement, which is long overdue, including a designated phone line and a weekend response. A city beautiful and sustainable with teeth. Imagine 13% TOT. Thank you.
Okay, is that the only card we have? Okay, thanks, Laura. Okay, what is the council's pleasure?
I just had one more question, Mayor.
Yeah.
James, when you did your survey, you showed the county of San Luis Obispo and the county of Santa Barbara. And then you did Ventura, but you only did Ojai and Ventura. You didn't do Thousand Oaks or Newbury Park or Westlake or,
Yep.
do we know what their rates are?
Rudy might actually have those.
We do know those rates, and just to be clear, the reason why we did not include them is because we did not consider them as much tourist destinations as Ventura and Ojai. And so we kind of went through the Santa Barbara and the San Luis Obispo County and the Ventura County ones and picked out the ones that are more touristy destinations, like Santa Maria is not in there. Okay. Guadalupe is not in there. There's a lot of them that aren't there. But in Ventura County, every jurisdiction except Camarillo, Camarillo has a 10% TOT. Even though Moore Park has no hotels, they still have a 10% TOT in the books. Camarillo has a 9%, for whatever reason, I don't know why.
Well, they've got the whatchamacallit center there.
Yeah.
They're building one.
Yeah, they've got the, what's their mall
They
called?
got the outlet mall, yeah.
They got the outlet, they got all the.
Somebody
malls.
wanted to stay in Camarillo at some point.
You want an outlet here?
Yeah.
Electrical outlet.
Yeah. Use Creek
we didn't
Road,
talk
you
about
get
that
there
last
faster
night.
to the outlet mall in Ojai.
The 8-acre outlet center in Ojai.
Yeah, okay. Bill?
Yeah, my only concern with the 13 is that it's, I want this thing to pass. And is there a difference between 12 and 13 in terms of passing it? 12 allows you to say, well, we're just like Santa Barbara and Goleta now. We're just going to be the same. Whereas 13 would be higher. And I'm, I guess that's the main thing and while I would like to see it dedicated, I think 2/3, in fact, is a problem in terms of getting passed. You have something? I'm fine.
To your point there, the research that I did on this issue,
Yeah.
the ballot measures that were requesting more than a 2% increase tended to not pass.
Okay,
There were some. There were a couple.
That's salient information.
But yeah.
Okay. So along those lines, just to move things along, I'm going to make a motion to accept the staff recommendation.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, if I may.
Was there? Okay. Yeah,
I would ask if we could make it 12.5%. And I don't think there's any problem in this community passing it. We passed a bond that cost us $60 million at 87.4%. People in Ojai are very smart when it comes to this sort of thing. They know that they would rather pay these taxes through the TOT than pay them out of their own pockets. I think if we had to go to 15%, we'd get more than enough votes. But I would say 12.5 because I think the natural progression from that, so next time the next council has to do it, it'll be 15 rather than setting it at 12. I think it'll shortchange us. And for us, one thing that we mathematically see when you look at these numbers is these numbers go up a lot higher a percentage of our budget than they do in any of these other communities.
Correct.
In looking at all these, at 13%, we would be between 750 and 1.2 million. That's an over 10% increase to our annual budget. So I like that extra 0.5%. I don't think it's going to scare anybody, but I think it make a big difference next time.
Psychologically, it still says 12, so I'll accept your amendment.
And that if you look at these, if you looked at them all and they said 12.5,
I accept your amendment.
Yeah, and I also just say I have never noticed what the TOT was in any community I ever stayed.
Okay.
It's never showed me.
Accepted.
You have persuaded the maker of the motions. And the second's okay with that?
I'll go along.
Okay, very good.
There's no
Reborn
problem
Randy and me.
My go-along mode tonight.
It's computers now, I tell you.
Okay, so
Harder to be.
So we got a motion? We
the
got a
motion
second?
is to direct staff to proceed with 12.5% as the target, okay? I guess do we need a vote on this, a roll call?
Not yet.
Not yet?
There is one other part of the staff report that was kind of a question just in general, is are we comfortable adding this to the same ballot as the cannabis tax?
Yes.
Well, that was part of the staff report. I think it's worth at least deliberating, so we're all on the same page.
I haven't really thought that through, but I know this will yield a lot more.
No, yeah. Well, I don't think it's an either or necessarily.
No,
I just
but I
want to
mean,
make sure we're all on the same page, that we are going to have two taxes on the ballot at the same time. But I personally don't have a problem, but I just want to make sure we talked about it.
We may have three.
Yeah, it may have an
board
impact
talked about
if the
theirs
school
last
board
night.
does one as well. The only other option is we do have a different timeline that we could opt for. Is that correct, James? As far as when we held this either one of those elections, or is it too late now?
You can change the election timing if one or the other is made into a special tax.
Okay, so we
A
want
general tax has to be on the same ballot as the
2/3.
council.
Yeah, I don't personally have any problem. I think the people in Ojai are smart enough to understand the two. As somebody who's worked very hard at passing a huge tax in this town, I think people get it. But I wanted to make sure we had consensus. Nobody gets surprised by that later on. Okay.
So 2020 election.
Okay, and does the data show that a general election is a better time to go than?
Yes.
It would seem like it would be, otherwise that sort of focuses,
a
the
lower
antis and a
threshold.
lower participation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, everybody clear on the motion?
Yep.
Okay,
You're
and
up.
you say we don't need a roll call yet?
No, not yet. We'll need a roll call when these come back for
Okay,
you.
so,
But at this time, consensus is fine.
Okay, so, seeing no objection, so ordered. That's, motion passes. Okay, we are now on.
Good night.
Yeah, good night, Rudy.
Last item.
Item number 5, is
It's
that?
still important.
Is that where we
Rudy's
are?
job's gonna be a lot easier next year. Assuming they
Okay,
pass.
city manager,
Yeah, I'll give just a brief staff
graffiti
report.
ordinance?
So it's a potential mural ordinance. It came up, the Arts Commission had asked, probably about a year ago now, what the city's rules were regarding murals, and whether somebody could come in to the city and, paint a mural on their wall, and what oversight the city would have on that. So as you saw on page 1 of the staff report, the current city code has only minimal discussion of murals. It essentially says that the city can regulate the size, paint color, and text style of a painted wall sign, which it uses those terms interchangeably. So the Arts Commission received that report and felt that there should be some city oversight of murals, and so they have put together a term sheet, which is included as attachment A to the report. And the term sheet establishes a application process where a person, a private property owner within the downtown area can apply for a permit or apply to install a mural, and it would be reviewed by a committee as defined it's made up of a various group of people, including 3 members of the Arts Commission, 2 city residents at large, and an individual with experience in the public art field. The idea would be that it gives the city more oversight over a potential mural popping up in, the heart of the city, essentially. So that mural is attached, or the term sheet for the mural is attached as attachment A, and I see we have the chair of the Public Art Committee here as well. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Christine, did you want to say anything to begin with here?
Can we ask Christine questions?
Yeah, if I can stay awake. This really came up because Maudette Fink, I'm pretty sure it was Maudette, but I'm so tired I could have it wrong, had put together a mural ordinance way back when the public art ordinance was being passed. But then she dropped off of the commission. And so that's really the origin of this mural. It wasn't that, it wasn't exactly, it was a little different than what was said. So that's the origin of it. It was always something the Arts Commission was looking at doing, having a mural ordinance. I think it's also really important to understand that this has absolutely nothing to do with the public art ordinance for new development, either public or private. That would be covered under whatever the ordinance says that has to do with, in other words, a private developer could choose to do a mural, but that would not fall under this new mural ordinance. This is really for existing buildings that are owned by businesses as opposed to residential that might want to all of a sudden put a mural up. Like, let's say Joe's Quick Stop that has a very old dilapidated mural decided to paint over that. But they wanted to put a new one up there, then they would go through this process. Let's say there's a mural on the side of Treasures of Ojai, which is really in dilapidated condition. If they painted over it, they'd have to go through this process. They could repair it without going through this process. They could call that artist in and have her repair it. So it's really to take care of situations like that, and then again, if somebody wants to put a mural up. I understand that the theater, the Ojai Playhouse, that someone is owning that now. I'm not sure of the exact circumstances, but the rumor is they want to put a mural up. So this would put them through a process that would guarantee not so much what the art is. That's really not our place to say, we like this, we don't like that. You can do this, you can't do that. But are they using the right kind of paints? Because there are certain paints that you use for murals. Do they have an anti-graffiti coating? Is the artist someone who knows about public art? Are they going to put it directly on the wall? Are they going to put it on a piece of wood that then will be attached to the wall? Can the wall withstand that kind of weight? It's so that you have people who can look at all those particulars and make sure that what is being done is going to be done well. And yes, there are aesthetic considerations. It should reflect the values and the character of whatever the neighborhood is that it's being put in. And it shouldn't be anything too controversial. It can't be signage that says burgers inside, come in for a burger. So there are things like that that are part of the mural ordinance as well.
So, and I'll answer any questions that you have.
I have a question.
Okay, you have a question? Go ahead.
On attachment A, the bottom, page 1, where it says, no murals that identify prices, products, or services inside the structure, blah, blah. Well, first of all, I'm in favor of this ordinance. I think you've done a great job. But, for example, okay, a product, what if you had a yoga studio and you wanted to do a mural that was people doing yoga?
In the nude.
In the nude, yes. No. That came from the mayor.
Is that a product inside?
But you get my point. Or you had
It must be late.
I just wanted what I wanted to do was maybe word that more carefully. You could have a pet store that wanted to do a mural of animals, or a plant store that wanted to do a mural of plants. And it would be in such a way that even if another business went in, that they would still like the mural. So how would you maybe, would that be a considered advertising a product, or would that be okay?
It's awful hard to say without actually seeing it, but just off the top of my head, and I'm just one person, I would think that that's not advertising the business, that's reflecting what is going on inside that building. But it isn't saying yoga classes, $20 an hour, 8 o'clock to 5, which is against our sign ordinance as well. So really that, in other words, the mural ordinance is dovetails with the signage ordinance and doesn't allow things the signage ordinance doesn't allow.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. You would have this. You wouldn't have a black and white rule on that. It sounds like.
Yeah, I don't think there can be any black and white.
And then my other question is, can you clarify? I forget where that is on page 3 of attachment A. So say someone does a beautiful mural, and then the building gets sold. I wasn't okay. Here it is. Where it says section 5D registration. Can you explain that? Can a new owner paint over a beautiful mural?
Anybody have an extra copy so I can look at what Susan's talking about?
Here. It says, the city attorney,
While the copy is being provided to Ms. Golden, the key there is that under federal and state law, the California Art Preservation Act and the Federal Visual Artists' Rights Act, they provide in a nutshell that an artist who still lives, who creates an artwork, including murals, including those affixed to a building, retains rights in the art to prevent its destruction or defacement, with some exceptions, including the ability of the person who pays for the art to buy that waiver, which most people who install a mural on the commercial scale who are sensible buy the waiver off and solve the problem that way. If they don't buy the waiver, or the deal that is cut with the artist allows the artist to retain those rights, then the artist has an ability to limit, if not block, not ownership change, but defacement of the mural. So if the VARA and CAPA rights were not waived, then if someone buys the building, they buy it subject to the rights of that artist in that mural to the extent that those laws create some rights.
And can I add something to that? And thank you, Matthew, because that says it all. Most murals are designated to only be on a wall for 5 years.
I didn't know.
And that usually is made clear to the artist as a contract with, we hope there would be a contract with the owner of the building. Because they deteriorate.
For that length of time, but it could be longer? Is that what you're saying?
It could be longer, but they usually deteriorate in that time period, as we've seen on those two that I mentioned, Joe's Quick Stop and Treasures of Ojai. They've just totally deteriorated. So if either they're repainted and touched up, or they're painted over and something else is put on, or nothing is put on. So if someone comes in and buys a building and they really hate that mural, they probably wouldn't have to live with it too long. I'm thinking.
Or on the other hand, if
but
they
artists
really
do
love
have
it,
rights.
they could rehire
and
the touch-up.
and as Matthew was indicating,
Yeah.
there have been lawsuits on this.
Okay.
So, Mary, I have a question.
Randy.
I guess my concern is and you're our expert tonight, Christine, is why wouldn't you, if for instance, the movie theater was just being reconstructed, and they wanted to, because it was costing millions of dollars, why couldn't they use a mural on the side of the building as part of their public art? That's one question. And then the second question, you're talking about creating another committee. I'm lost if we already have an arts commission. Why wouldn't anything, a mural or anything of that nature, come through the arts commission?
Okay. Question one first. We actually had written a, what do you call it, Matt? Not a covenant, an agreement with the owner of Primavera who owns the theater. I can't think of the word for it. That's what happens when you're going to be.
I'm not quite sure what you're
A what?
referring to.
A developer's agreement where you have rights.
Covenant.
Yeah, covenant.
Covenant came to me. We actually had a covenant and had a meeting that we held with the owner of Primavera. This was about, what, a year ago? And it was going to be a public art project. The Arts Commission voted to do something to that wall. It doesn't have to be a mural. There's so many other things that can happen to the side of a wall. You can put a piece of sculpture on the side of a wall. You could do beautiful tile work on the side of a wall, like RTK tile. There's all kinds of things. It would have gone through the whole public art ordinance process with requests for proposals and a jury that would have selected what would go on that wall. We were literally at the 11th hour, and the owner decided after a meeting with family that the theater might not sell if they had a stipulation that public art was going to go up on that wall. So that's why that didn't happen. Does that answer your question?
No.
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 Well, that was a story. But that was interesting.
It doesn't answer.
It's a great story.
Come on.
Right,
let
but
Randy-
the question was, why couldn't someone use a mural as part of the public art? And so that's what I'm saying. Again, the difference is that building is being renovated on a different process than if I had bought that building and decided that I'm going to renovate it. Now I have the limits of anything over $300,000 that I've got to do a public art venture with the Arts Commission. Am I correct?
If I could jump in here, Councilmember Haney, as I understand the proposal from the Arts Commission in this term sheet, it would be that an owner of a commercial property who wishes to install a mural as part of the development project could do so, but would have to get it reviewed and approved through the existing public art ordinance process.
Mhm.
If you had a commercial property owner who wished to install a mural and it wasn't part of a development, then they would come in through this ordinance process.
And
But
that's
either
what I'm-
way,
and that's what I'm trying to
it would
say.
be
Why do we
possible.
need to create two ways of going about this when we already have one process? in
Because somebody
place?
might want to put a mural up. Go ahead, Christine.
Look, here's the key. I think that will answer your question. In one case that Matt described, the money for the project is coming from 2% for the arts of something that is going to be developed. In the other case, it is totally monetarily the expense of the owner of that building. They don't cross over. That's why it's different, because we don't do anything. We don't collect money from them. They don't have to spend 2% of anything. They want to put a mural up, it's their expense.
They originate the request, right?
Yeah, they've made a request, they're going to pay for it.
I guess I'm lost on, I'm hearing that we need two governing bodies over this, and I'm lost on that.
Well, I don't know,
Why can't all
what
of
do you
this
mean
just
by
work
two
through the Arts
governing
Commission?
bodies?
Okay, let me try.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay, let me try to clarify. It's not two governing bodies. What I understand Christine to be saying is that if somebody wants to put a mural up, they don't automatically end up over on the other side. In fact, they don't end up on the other side. They just have a special procedure, still by the Arts Commission, right?
Yes.
Who will look at it using certain guidelines that will control something that potentially deteriorates in 5 years and, is ephemeral. It'll be gone. So.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm just trying to defend what I'm either heard or have read. You said that there's going to be a body of 3 arts commissioner, 2 people outside of the commission, and 1 other person. What is that body called?
Outside of the commission?
Could you
Somebody
define that
explain that to
section
me. What
for
is
me?
that?
Yeah, it's on page 2 of 3. It's the Mural Review Committee. So I think the question is, what's
Why do we need a?
Why do we need a mural
why do we need
review
that when we
committee
got an arts commission?
when we already have a public art committee?
Right, that's like, maybe, I'm sorry I couldn't say that so clearly, James, thank you.
I got you.
Okay, you're just saying is who's going to have the responsibility to review it?
Well, I'm just seeing that there's a
I'm not
redundancy
finding
here, and
that.
I don't understand why we need
Page
it.
2 of 3 of the staff report
Oh, of
talks,
the staff report?
I think the heart of this
talks
one.
about the mural review committee.
Because I was going to talk to you about that afterwards, James, because I thought we decided it would just come before the Arts Commission.
That's not reflected in the minutes, but that could be a recommendation. It could also be something council chooses to do.
Yeah, I mean,
go to Arts
my
Commission.
my recollection is, and you know, this
Okay.
has sat kind of
I'm
in
ready
the
to make a
pulpit.
motion.
Please,
I'll
let
make a motion.
Christine speak so we can hear her.
Okay. My recollection is, and that doesn't mean it's correct, but my recollection is that there was discussion at the Arts Commission, and it was decided that for the public art ordinance, there was a special committee designated by ordinance. And we talked about, should it be that committee to do this mural? And I thought it was decided, no, that people would just come before the Arts Commission.
Agree with Randy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's just a subset of
Yeah,
the
she
Arts
agrees.
Exactly.
Commission. It's
Yeah.
not
Thank
that,
you.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Shall I make a
so
motion?
as long as that's clear to everybody?
It won't be what we call the committee to approve public art, or it wouldn't be a public art jury. It would just be the Arts Commission.
Right.
Susan's got a motion.
Okay,
Got
I'll
it.
just, I'll make a motion that we accept staff recommendation, receive the Arts Commission's recommended mural ordinance term sheet, and provide direction to the city attorney to draft a mural ordinance to implement an application and review process for murals on private property in the downtown corridor. And did we straighten out that glitch? I don't need to put that in the motion?
Nope, doesn't need to
Okay.
be in the motion.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, we've got a second. Any objection? If not, so ordered. What?
Okay,
Do
so
we
I
need
just-
to add a word in front of private property that says business?
Well,
It says private commercial.
So that commercial?
It says private commercial property on it.
Does it say that? Good, because it should say that,
Yeah, well,
because we're
it's
not talking,
Ordinance
okay, good.
preparation.
okay.
And Mayor,
This is
just
just
one
an
other
ordinance draft, okay?
I just, one last
Type
question
A.
from Mr. Clarity over here. The downtown corridor, are we limiting murals to that space only?
Oh,
Or are we saying that any business in this community that would like to do a mural should have the opportunity to apply for it?
Well, anyone can do it now. This would just be the regulations for the ones in the corridor. Isn't that right, the way it works? So
Yeah.
nobody is being prohibited from doing it, but those people do it in the corridor have to go through a process so that we don't get something that deteriorates or gets put up and torn down. I mean, that,
so,
Yeah,
so,
and Christine mentioned that this was a long process. We went back and forth on multiple things. There was talk of just opening it up to, or making it to just any private commercial property. I went back and checked the minutes. We ended
Within
up-
the city.
Right. We ended up going with the downtown corridor with the explanation that there is a heightened sensitivity to those properties. You know, the ones in the arcade, the arcade's a bad example, but the Playhouse Theater is a good example, and the ones in the downtown corridor.
So
You
again,
wanna-
just to clarify that, and I hear what you're saying. So if I own the building down on Bryant Street,
you're not in there.
I can just put a mural up.
Well,
You'd be subject to the standard.
But I'm not subject to, I'm
The
not
sign
subject.
ordinance.
Just the sign
Right,
ordinance.
I'm not subject to the mural ordinance.
Correct.
And
And we
that's what
could
I'm trying to
expand
say. Why aren't we putting all murals in the mural ordinance? Why are we?
well, do you want to? If you do,
That's
make a
what-
motion.
yeah. I'm just asking that out loud.
I think you should.
Okay, but does anybody want to amend this to do that?
I think it should be
Yeah.
all-inclusive. I don't agree with it being downtown corridor
well,
myself.
then let's amend the motion. You want to?
I think one of the reasons why the commission ended up recommending the corridor was because the concern that if they tried to go too far, that it wouldn't be approved by council. So,
Oh, well, let's surprise
I
them.
lost
Randy
that
and
argument.
Christine are agreement.
Not me, though. I thought it should be all.
yeah.
I don't always agree with every argument.
You know what?
This is a little contrary to your earlier comments about regulating private property, but okay.
Yeah, you're showing a little Ohio inconsistency here.
Commercial.
Commercial.
So
Money
to
grubbers,
the-
yeah,
To the
right.
councilwoman who made the amendment, would you accept my amendment? that it applies
Absolutely,
to all-
yes. The more I think about it, the more that makes sense.
Yes, it
Because
does.
if you're on Bryant Street, you would have that same sensitivity that people in the corridor have.
Absolutely.
So I accept your amendment. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, now, does anybody have any objection to the motion that is now stated, which it means this is all murals in town? Now we don't have to
All
figure out what the
business.
corridor is.
Okay, but I still
Thank
have
you,
one,
Randy. That
I
was-
still have one
We're done.
question. I still have
Okay.
one question. Wait.
Side of
No,
the
that
Playhouse
one's
can
over.
officially have a.
No, I just want to know,
Well, you can talk all you want later.
private home can do a mural? Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Commercial.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
This is all for all commercial.
Your neighbors might not like it, but yeah.
You could do
Okay.
It's like they can have a high
Might call that
hedge.
graffiti.
Yeah, right, yeah, but if the
Backyard.
hedge is high enough, they won't care.
Thank you.
It's hard to put a mural on a hedge, too, that's another advantage.
Someone will try.
Okay.
Someone will try.
That gets us to reports. Anybody have a report that they want to share? Okay, Ryan, anything? No? No?
I think most of you already know that Friday's youth climate strike in Ojai was I consider it a huge success. By the end of the day, we had youth, I believe, from every school in the valley. My estimate was, if you count everybody from 12 o'clock through 6 o'clock, probably about 300 youth. I was kind of estimating 40 per school times however many schools. So it was very well attended. We had some really good speakers. And we had International Peace Day, a nice relaxing day in Libby Park. And I'm not really ready. There was one other thing I want to call.
Don't feel any pressure to do this.
No.
We can read it, we'll read it in the Ojai Valley News. yeah.
Okay, but I finally went to my first Green Drinks monthly event. You know, they have a YouTube channel now that Ray Powers put up, and the past videos are really good. I highly recommend watching the one on Matilda. Green Drinks, and they meet, I finally figured out, at the, what's the Topa Topa Brewery
Brewery
it's
Gulch.
called. And you have a really nice view. It's from, the socializing is 5:30 to 6, and then they have they've had a series, very serious speakers. I mean, by serious, I mean they're expert speakers. And the last one was on regenerative agriculture with Dr. David White, you probably, all of you know, and I felt like the level of the information that he gave was just so incredibly riveting. He would be part of the town hall, but he's part of another event. But he described how, if the town would understand and if the farmers would understand what regenerative agriculture, biological agriculture is about, how we can really sequester.
These are lectures or things
Yeah.
from experts.
Yeah.
Ryan, did you have something?
Yeah, I just want to add,
really
I
good.
had a VCOG meeting last week, and CEO Powers from the county came and gave a great presentation. I just want to really commend the county. They're spending a lot of money on the homeless issue. They are really focused on their new kind of holistic approach to treatment of homeless and other mental health issues. There's a lot of money being invested in various beds because there just isn't as many mental health beds and other things in the county, so they're really working on that. And I also had brought up to him an issue that I was uncomfortable with regarding emergency response that hadn't been dealt with yet. I really want to commend him for getting back to me, and James and I are setting up a meeting to just discuss some of those with the head of the emergency people in Ventura. And we have done a great job here, and through the family shelter have done a great job of supporting Ojai and the homeless problem. But I think it's important that we let people in our community know some of these things are kind of far away, but there is an infrastructure that's putting in place that's really successful, and they are monitoring individuals who they are treating with mental health issues and homeless issues and other types of issues, and following them through the process, and it's been really successful. So I just want to make sure that we understand that program's out there, because it doesn't necessarily reach into the valley here, but it doesn't mean it's not accessible to the county members who are here.
Thank you. Bill?
Two quick things. I want to just report that I believe that our contract with the Chamber of Commerce to implement various things that we don't have time for and staff doesn't have time is really paying dividends, what I see through the Economic Development Collaborative. The contract they had where they brought up and had a consultant up here to talk with and do a walkthroughs and a report for a lot of our retail businesses in terms of giving them better ideas about how to bring dollars into their businesses and capture those dollars. The Chamber is really backfilling and extending and maximizing that grant money and that grant report. And he's also doing a lot of work in terms of finally making some progress on discussing broadband enhancement in the Valley, important for our primary employment future. And I just really think it was a wise decision, and I'm already seeing a lot of benefits from that agreement. Second of all, I went to the electric vehicle expo at the county. I was kind of more than impressed. I'm not going to get into all the details, but everything from utility vehicles to cars to school buses and trucks. The technology has matured, and I, for one, will be just serving notice. When we get into our next CIP cycle, I'm going to be looking at every option for electric vehicles in our public works fleet.
Great, that fits right in with 100% clean energy.
Yeah.
Okay, James, you have a report for us of any sort that you haven't already given us?
Yeah, I was going to remind everybody about California Clean Air Day on Wednesday the 2nd, and also the Climate Committee was appointed and will begin meeting, and we'll start getting notices out about those meetings.
Good question. I believe there's been both some movement in case law to the city attorney, as well as on the front of new ordinances that have stood the test of case law and challenges with respect to the camping issue and regulation of camping behavior. And I just hope that we can share that with the city manager and with the people being impacted, where we're not doing things to be punitive, but at the same time, people need to respect each other, and that includes people, defecating and.
Can I just make a point about that that's ironically hilarious? My office used to be in 407A Bryant Circle, and the city wouldn't let me be there.
Right.
But they didn't have any problem letting all of the homeless people and all the campers be there. Because it wasn't zoned for a private office in the private office building, but it is zoned for...
What I'm trying to think, I think there's some new tools
that
have been developed, and we need to make sure that we're aware of them. And
yes,
absolutely.
we've been taking a look at that. We've been in constant conversation with the Sheriff's Department and other local partners on some enforcement options. This particular one in Bryan is new to me, but I think maybe not new to the sheriffs. But yeah, there's conversations going. The heart of the Boise case that everyone's so apoplectic about is that you can't enforce your camping ban everywhere, at all times, at all places. Yeah. You can enforce it, as the footnote says, in particular locations, in particular times.
Right.
Particularly when you can root it in safety or in preservation of critical infrastructure, et cetera. Camping bans can be enforced in particular places and particular times if done sensibly, and so we're certainly aware of those issues. And
I can attest to the fact that it is an issue over there. There were people who slept in the bushes, and a lot of people who needed help over there. The other thing is it is very close to a school. I mean,
right.
Where this is occurring is right next to the Wild Tennis Academy, and there are a lot of students who travel through there. And I don't know what law enforcement problems we've had there before, but I can anecdotally contest to that it is an issue.
Captain Freihoff also shot me a text saying that they have, I guess he heard the comments, but he has had extra patrols in the area, but obviously we need to look at some other options.
Okay, and while we're on that topic, happy birthday, James.
Oh, hey. Happy birthday,
James Freihoff, it's his birthday.
You can't call it sick on your birthday.
Yeah, right, yeah. sorry.
Andy was here on his birthday, I remember that.
Yeah.
I have one.
I want to add one more. I'd like to add one more thing to what was just said. Is we are developing a bit of a, I don't know that I'd call it a problem yet, but on the lower Libby Park area, there seems to be sort of a proprietary group taking over certain areas. It's not like they come and use the park. And the other night, I think I saw a would-be camping arrangement under the table. Plus, I'm hearing from people, parents down there, the concern about our visitors are maybe smoking in public, and not necessarily. Not that we want any of the stuff, but
what's the going rate for our parking stalls down there?
Yeah, there's Randy, he's always thinking of revenues, that's good. I don't think we'd get much from these folks, but anyway, I just wanted to
I
like.
thought one of them was charging, I thought one of them was charging their visitors.
It's a cash cow.
Okay, so Mayor, I have a couple of things for agenda discussion, or if we're there,
Yep.
future agenda
We
items.
are.
So, James, I just want to ask, we're going to have the recycle, the two-stroke recycling discussion that's coming up.
Second meeting in October.
Okay, I'd like to add, this is our latest, greatest one, is the Ojai City Solar Initiative. And I'd like to have a discussion on how we're going to solarize this community.
Oh,
I think
good.
it's important that we start that.
Okay.
And then the third thing is, I'm getting lots of emails and questions about a marquee. The fact that we had the Libby Bowl events this summer, and a lot of people didn't even know they were happening. One. Two, we still think about that marquee as a safety enhancement for the community. So, someone even brought up that Buku might even be.
They're willing to have it on
That
their
they would
property.
like to be a participant in that. So again, I'd like to have the discussion so that we can weigh in about size, shape, and so forth.
Yeah.
So I'd like to bring that back.
And maybe something we can outsource to the chamber too to handle it if we don't want to have staff handle it. Once it's set up.
Yeah, the only reason, so we had said we'd come back with the budget if there was extra money this year. There was not enough money this year, so that was why it hasn't come back yet, but we can bring it back if.
And there may be some possibilities with fire emergency funding.
Right.
There was some last year, and we weren't ready to.
We may be able
do
to
much
raise
with it.
money for something like
Right.
that too. I mean, the
Yeah.
bowl did raise a lot of money itself. So.
And has anybody, going along the line with this marquee, I did not want to see one in Libby Park, but I'm just wondering if the Historic Society and the Playhouse, there was a marquee on the front of that theater at one point, that maybe there would be a possibility of some kind of joint venture that would restore that and then have it available.
Well, it's still there.
Yeah. Well,
Marquee on the front of the Playhouse?
No, that's
Oh.
that's kind of a cheap
I agree
old
with you,
kind where
Mayor.
you get up on the ladder and poke the letters in.
Don't tell Andy Gilman it's cheap. He works his tail off on that thing.
Well, yeah, well, he does.
It's a lot
I'm
more
talking about a one that looks like the old timey,
Right.
but is electronic.
Right.
Yes.
In fact,
I
your
agree.
dad knew a lot about that stuff.
Yeah, he does.
right?
He did.
Okay.
I have-
Yeah, Susan, you?
What, we all received a letter, right, about the horse manure situation on Daly. How is that going to be handled?
So as is perhaps obvious, that's an active code enforcement case. We're happy to provide a briefing under privilege to the council on that and steps that have been taken, steps that can be taken. One of the challenge points there is that the zone, the RO4 zone on that North Daly and North Drown area allows animal keeping, including owning and keeping and riding horses.
But not commercial.
Right. What's prohibited is commercial. And as I understand it, there are some concerns that have been raised by some neighbors that horses, period, shouldn't be allowed. And that would be a different conversation than enforcing the current code. But we
But-
can get a further analysis to council.
But
I have something to add to that. I found out today that property is up for sale. So, and she has actually moved the services that she was providing to Santa Barbara. But she's more than likely leaving Ojai.
Okay.
And I think what I can say in response is I think we have said for a while now, and Randy and I had talked about this before too, that, or Councilmember Haney, sorry, had talked about there is not an animal keeping ordinance currently, and I will want to bring that recommendation forward to council, so we will do that. So we will bring that forward, even if we can't
It
talk
would seem
about the-
we should at least have what the county has.
Yeah,
and-
yeah, I was
And
gonna
many
say-
people feel like
yeah.
what the county have is adequate.
Yeah.
And that is our recommendation is enforce the same rule that the county has.
Okay,
I
thank
have
you.
just one quick.
And then,
one.
wait, I'm not done.
Oh, I'm sorry, Susan. I thought you were done.
When you mentioned about the climate emergency
Yes.
mobilization committee, I just want to make sure the public is clear. I don't know if you said that. The meetings will be open to the public. But do you have any idea, how does this work? Do you give direction when the first meeting is? I'm not sure how it all works.
So we're getting everybody coordinated, and then we will kind of lay out, it's an ad hoc committee, so that it's not a Brown Act committee, but we are going to recommend that they open them to the public, because I think one of the things that they will want to do is have the public come give ideas.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of how we're laying it out. So we're going to have that just initial discussion about that, how we'll do it.
Figure out how we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just wanted to add some clarity to
Yeah.
that too, is I thought that the 5 members were going to put together a thought process as to how
Right.
a ad hoc
Yeah.
committee or a commission or
Whether it should be
whatever
standing
Oh, yes.
down the road. So.
Yeah, you're correct.
They make
That's
the
what I, that's,
recommendations.
so,
Yeah.
so as far as leading that discussion, my thought process was that the city manager would be leading that with those 5 individuals.
Yeah, and that's something that's happening in the next few weeks, not in 2 months.
Yeah, yes, so we're trying to get everybody coordinated. We literally sent an email today with dates, and they're dates within the next week or 2.
Okay,
All of
thank
them.
you. That's what I needed to know.
We have
Thank
heard
you.
one person's traveling for a couple of weeks. We may need to meet with just the 4, just for the initial kickoff.
Okay.
So I met with James on this, and we're going to work really hard at coaching these folks. We got a great group that the 5 people that have been selected are outstanding, and have them understand the Brown Act issue so that we don't get wrapped around the axle of the Brown Act, and let them take this, and they can have all the committees, but they should come up with kind of a charter or what have you, and report back to us as to how they plan to
Mission
proceed.
statement, right, I agree.
Right, yeah,
100%.
so I would think we would have that by middle of October?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You had.
Sorry, this isn't.
Oh, I just want to say, the person that's traveling, I just want to make sure these are people that are usually here.
Yes.
That this is not going to be an ongoing problem.
Yeah, we've kind of dropped it on them.
Yeah, I
And so a couple
understand.
of people had plans, but
Yeah.
they've all expressed interest in attending and being present.
Okay.
So we got positive response.
Okay, thank you.
And nothing is going to come out of this except through the process publicly that comes and delivers a report or recommendations to us, and then we take it as we would normally do. So that'll give people plenty of opportunity to share their ideas and try to kind of come up with some sort of direction that helps the council, move it into action.
All right,
Okay.
just one.
Ryan.
I want to set up. I want us to, and this may be. I don't know who should be included in this or who wants to, but I'd like us to set up a meeting with the new director who has been sworn in now. He had his first meeting at Air Pollution Control District. I want to set the tone that we're more interested in working with them and kind of put together an idea list of where grant money might be available. I am going to have, I'm trying to meet with Steve Colomay again, but I didn't know if that's something that anybody else wanted to be interested, but James and I will talk, and if anybody else wants to get on board. let me know.
So Ryan, we met with Steve Colomay, and who's the young lady he brought?
Lena?
Lena.
Yeah.
Lena?
Yeah, I don't remember the
And
last
we did talk about that, and in fact, we talked about how we might get some additional funding for 2-cycle backpack
Yeah.
replacements
Yeah.
and things of that nature, and he said they didn't really have money set aside for things like that.
They don't for that, but
So we
there's
may have to have a bigger picture idea of how they can
that's what
help
I'm
us.
thinking. And what I want to do now that there's a new director, and since I've been there, it's been kind of most of the work we've been doing is this transitional period. And Mike Viegas was there for a long time. Now that things are new, I kind of am hoping that we can set a new tone for our work with them. And I think the way to do that is to sit down and try and target some things that we may be eligible for and see what we can get out of it and get moving on it.
Do you know if the air pollution control group has a resource for like the old cash for clunkers routine is to buy it and get it off the road? What about on these 2-stroke engines, for example? I've got a chainsaw I had back in the old days, and it's been in my garage for forever. I don't want to circulate that out and have somebody else putting it back. So, but I also don't have the place to have it destroyed. But I'd like to give it to like the air pollution control district. Do they have that kind of a service where
Well, I'm not aware. It's interesting because there's not a lot of stuff for private individuals. There's a lot of stuff for commercial stuff, and a lot of it. When I understood this from Mike, because we get a lot of approvals, but we don't get a lot of grinding through the work and making decisions on who's getting it. It comes to us kind of already in a packet, and we're saying, all right, are we good with that or not good with that? But their staff has vetted it very completely. So I don't believe there's a lot, but I can always inquire what there is.
I could smash it myself and turn it to the recyclers down there at the hazardous waste.
But I do know this much: Orange County had a 5-year program where they were buying back backpack blowers from everybody.
Yeah.
And they were the first that county was the first to actually get the Air Quality Board to buy into that. So we might, through Ryan's investigation, we might figure out how they did it and see if Ventura County's willing to do something
We
similar.
have to look, because it's not really, it's hardly, it's pretty much never, but not exclusively never, county money. It's all grant money through the various grants they have, and the grants are very targeted. So the staff at APCD kind of gets applications, makes those apply to those grants, and then gets the grant, and then the board approves it as going to them. And when Mike explained it to me when he was, when my orientation, it was a lot of diesel rebuying, which, like Russell Sidney and some other people, they're in favor of it, but they don't think it's as important as some of this other stuff. What I'm curious is how much of that is still around, because that's kind of been done a lot. And then we want to move to electric. We want to move this thing along. And I feel like we, like I said, I finally saw a business, I believe is a farmer from the valley, I'm not totally sure, but when a farmer has equipment that's old diesel equipment, what it costs to fix it up, APCD can pay with grant money to get it to be a much cleaner version of diesel, but it's still clean diesel. It's not necessarily electric, and it's not necessarily some of the more preferred things. We're going to have to see where that grant money comes from. But what I don't want is us to be left out. And since I've been there, there's only been one business I potentially recognize that had anything to do with our valley, and I feel like we're missing some of it.
Mayor, one last thing, can we have the city manager contact Regina Hurst and get a report back on the grant funding for the
$500,000 the city got, or?
Yeah, and we did, I heard that we got it. I heard it actually went through last Friday, but I think we'd like to hear it straight from her and actually get a report from her on where she is in the process.
I wanted to add something to what you said, cash for clunkers. There's a program, if you have a really old car, you can trade it in for a really good electric bike. And that's like a $2,000-$3,000 bike. Yeah, no, it exists now.
It's a great idea.
It's great, it's great.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're on new agenda items. You're done. Ryan, do you have any? Okay, do you have any agenda?
No, I'm glad we're going to put solarizing Ojai on the
Okay.
agenda.
We're done. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.